we are live. How I wish you were here. We're just two lost souls swimming in a fishbowl, year after year, running over the same old ground, and have we found the same old fears? I wish you were here. Good evening, all you happy people. All right, everyone's got links in. I've shared this thing all over the place. Hopefully, I don't need to go back and get technical because I never do a hangout that doesn't wind up with something technical and goofy preventing me from what I want to do. So, what's new with all you fine folks out there in Google Plus land? How's your day been? What's new? I just got home from work, so cheers. Talking a bunch tonight.
What was in that? I just got home from work too, and I got a brewski too. What do you got?
Oh, this isn't a brewski yet. At the time, it's just a I have the potato vodka for the after party a little later on.
Nice.
But yeah, it's been a long day. I'm glad to no longer be working. On the professional end of it, anyway. Parshah talk. A link up here in case anybody's interested in the theme. I don't know how much Parshah talking we do out of it, but you know, it's a good reason to.
I was not able to read commentary on it, but I did read it.
Right on. You're gonna fool everybody into thinking you're a commie, you know.
Now, see, that's a pretty good site there. I actually made a module for the Eastward Bible program of Rashi's comments with the Chabad text with it, and I put it into a Eastward format, but I couldn't release it because I didn't know if there was copyright on that or not. You know, like I wrote to him. There was a ton of people that wanted it, you know, because it's awesome. Like, the Eastward Bible program, I've been in it forever, and they got like of course it mostly went evangelical right now, but I made up world religion posts and also a ton of stuff out of Judaism. And they had some really excellent modules from Hebrew and Greek also, like original language kind of stuff. And so I was able to also find the JPS 1984 translation of the Tanakh for the Eastward Bible program, which was awesome. So for doing word searches and all that, it made things a ton easier rather than sifting through the stuff that we have. I got tired of using Strong's, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's good stuff. Chabad has you know, they provide a really good service, you know. Some folks might snicker, but not I. Not I. Not I.
So how's your day been so far, James?
Busy. I got my son, of course, is in town, and I got called in because we need to, you know, we kind of need a little bit of money and hours, so I've been called in to cover a few shifts at work, and you know, fortunately, you know, I'm able to bring the kiddos with me. So it's been kind of hectic when you're half entertaining, half babysitting, half working, and then the other half of you trying to stay sane. It's kind of an effort at times, but no, it's It's been all right, man. Not too shabby. Not too shabby of a day whatsoever. How you been doing?
Well, I'm just hanging in there, taking one day at a time.
Right on. This is an action-packed Parshah. If anybody got to read it, I mean, lots of stuff happening in this bad boy. Yeah, of course, yeah, the laws of purification, striking the rock that kept Moses out of the promised land. You got all kinds of drama and wars, and the death of Aaron. When I was younger and I read about the death of biblical characters, it's very dry, isn't it? Especially in the Old Testament, it just seems dry. It seems to be told in a very dry way.
Moses took Aaron to the top of the mountain, took his clothes off, gave it to his son, and then he died. The end.
But if you picture it, if you just take the time to close your eyes, because Aaron was basically a prophet. I mean, he was in a way a prophet in and of himself. I mean, at least to Pharaoh, but still. And this time when I read it, I really felt something. It really hit me. I wonder if Jesus knew it was going to happen to him, or what would become of, enjoy your dinner, Hylas. And Jesus knew, okay, because, we have the man, the myth, the legend, and then we have an idol, of Jesus. And it's almost like when Jesus said the Son of Man needs to be risen up like the, staff of Moses. And when you read this Parshah, you hear about the snakes biting the Israelites, the plague of snakes, and everyone turns to Moses. Moses says, God, I need a little help, and God says, make you a copper pole with the form of a snake wrapped around it. Whenever the Israelites look up to this, they will look to heaven, or their eyes would be directed to heaven, and they would not die from the snake bites. And I think it's interesting that in the Second Kings, it's like the first or the second chapter in Second Kings, people were worshiping that pole and serving it with incense and stuff, and it had to be destroyed. It doesn't mean the pole wasn't effective. I mean, Torah is eternal, that sort of thing. But I think it's interesting that maybe Jesus knew that people would take him too far and study more him and not the Father. I always wondered that. We have people chatting over here in the chat room, and I'm completely ignoring you.
I was just wondering. I was thinking to myself, what did it look like? Because I immediately pictured the symbol that they use for medical care. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I do.
Is that what it would have looked like, or?
I think so. I don't think it had wings. I think that was a Greek edition, but I've heard that.
Let's see. I don't know. Biblical Archaeology Review did an article on the idea of that. I'll try to look it up for you guys, and if I come across your channels, I'll post it. All right? Because I have no idea where it is. It's in a magazine that I had. I also got online access to it, so I could look it up.
You're friends with me on Facebook. I would love for you to do that. Yeah.
See, this is what I'm thinking. I'm thinking metaphorically that the serpent and the serpent stings could be a form of saying metaphorically a simulation. When you die, you leave the community. When you die, you're assimilated into other nations. And the whole of the Torah almost is about, other nations do this, so, I command you to do this. So that's why people don't really understand the strange laws. Like, why do I gotta why can't I wear, like, mixed threads? Well, you know what? Maybe somebody else was doing that it's anti-assimilation policies being implemented, like from the beginning, exactly in the religious code. Those people eat those kinds of animals, therefore those people are going to be unclean. And you hear it all the time about, like the Philistines, the uncircumcised, things like that. So this would, when your eyes come to the pole after you've been bitten, or after you've eaten of the tree of knowing good and bad, you've been bitten, and you start the assimilating process, because some of these texts are being written while they're being assimilated in the first place. Like some scholars believe, maybe the Deuteronomistic history from Deuteronomy comes out of the time period of Josiah, maybe, and that was the huge reformation of the text of Deuteronomy being found in the temple. So this whole anti-assimilation would totally come into play. They were terribly terrified of being absorbed into other cultures. Rightly so. I mean, when they were taken over by the Assyrians, we don't have anything from them. They're lost. And the only thing you have might be like Tobit, maybe. Tons of influences. So when you look back at the pole, you remember who you are, and you remember the self, and you remember how you got there. And the serpent sting doesn't sting you once you're able to relay that both to yourself and to your children in ages to come, because it keeps that at bay. So that's the way I see it. There could be 100 different meanings for this, you know what I mean? And it can't mean only that, but when I read it, I'm kind of thinking, not that it meant that, but that I could take it as that, It's pretty interesting. Just another slant on it.
That's kind of cool. And yeah, some things that were even once permitted wind up being not. I mean, Jacob built a pillar. And that was just fine for Jacob to build a pillar. And then we get later on in Torah, apparently heathen nations and whatnot had started building pillars for their pagan worship, and God said no more. I mean, Jacob has built a pillar in the Noachide code anyway, and to Israel, building a pillar now is, or declaring a pillar even, is a no-no. Jordan, welcome. Willkommen, beyond the new. Come on in. Welcome to the Nut Hutch.
Hey, how you doing, Jordan?
Hey, Wayman, how's it going?
Good.
Glad you could make it, sir. That's a really interesting take on the serpent. That really is. That's
Yeah. So another thing that I never really got, and I think that the nation of Israel as a country, not as a religious aspect of it, but as a country, is the red heifer. Oh, they love it. Like evangelical groups, they'll send millions of red heifers over there, because they're they're like, hey, we'll help you out. We'll push the end for you, So all these events that we think are going to happen. Like I never really understood why, the state of Israel never said, all right, guys, thanks for the money, but we're cutting you off at this point. No proselytizing. See you later. We don't really need your red heifers because pretty much we're all set here. Thanks. I don't know. Like it seems like just by taking it, they're exacerbating the whole thing. Not exacerbating. Maybe that's the wrong word.
that might be good. That might be the right word. Yeah, I gotta admit, Israel state's pretty tolerant. More tolerant than I'd be. Which is why God did not make me Jewish. That I know of. On the Hertz edition humus on the serpent, I found this here. It said, did then the brazen serpent possess the power of slaying or bringing to life? No, but so long as the Israelites looked upwards and subjected their hearts to their Father in heaven, they were healed. But then they refused, then they were destroyed. That's from the Mishnah. the brazen serpent was a token of salvation to put them in remembrance of the commandments of the law. For he that turned toward it was not saved because of that which was beheld, but because of thee, the Savior of all. That's from the Wisdom of Solomon. The brazen serpent made by Moses was naturally preserved as an object of veneration by the Israelites, but in the course of the centuries up to the desert, but then in the course of centuries, it tended to become and eventually became an object of idolatrous worship, and it was destroyed by King Hezekiah. That is 2 Kings, chapter 18, verse 4. He is highly praised by the rabbis for this act.
So I would think the rod of Moses would be in that category too.
Yeah. We gotta be careful about them physical beings, physical things. Good, interesting stuff. It was brought up to me about how the Israelites fight and the rules of engagement of war that are given to them in Torah. And I mean, Israel probably could have taken out Edom. And even after that, God says in Torah not to hold an Edomite in contempt. Even after what happened, in the desert.
Yeah, I think some of the oldest texts in the Bible are holy war hymns, like the Song of Deborah out of Judges, and the Song of the Sea, and plenty of Psalms in the Book of Psalms. Yeah, that would be Psalms. And it slips my mind on what it is. There was a psalm about the victory over the sea and the killing of the Egyptians in Psalms. I don't know if it was 27. I used to know all this stuff, but it's slipping my mind. It's horrible.
You're getting old.
Bad. I just haven't been reading it, and I'm losing it in my mind.
And an awful lot of whining, too. I mean, the Israelites just couldn't stop. They just whined and whined in this Parshah. Why have you brought it to this place? It's horrible.
Well, I think that it depends on the writers, too. I mean, if the writer who's taking the account thinks that the people are a bunch of whiners, oh, definitely he's going to not give them any mercy, But you take somebody like Isaiah and Jeremiah, who look back at that time in the wilderness as kind of like a nostalgia of how close God was to his people, leading them through. You end up feeling all nice and cozy about it. When you go back and read the accounts from the other writers, you're like, man, these people are a bunch of whiners. They didn't do anything they were told.
Why have you brought us to this place? It's all hot and desert. I want to go back to Egypt. It's kind of like the soul. If you look at the soul as being descended into slavery and then freed, we often want to go back. And that happens after the point of no return, after the Sea of Reeds. There's no turning back. And then you start whining. But you push on through. I'm not. It's just, interesting.
Yeah, but it's quite amazing. Like a little illustration here. See, I should have been a minister, but I went on a hike with my buddy right after night shift. Like, I don't know why he always plans all these things. Like, he seen I had a day off and it was coming off nights, so I get out on the hiking trail like 10 o'clock after being up on a 12-hour shift, from 7 at night to 7 in the morning, and my eyes are all red, So we're walking, and he's like, oh, man, this is a great day, Of course I'm going to be whining. So I say to him, look, man, I'm going to be whining this whole trip because I'm really tired, but I'm going to enjoy it. I have my pack. Don't worry about it. Just let me whine, and I'll follow you. And I think that's what it was. Like, maybe if you look at it that way, it's not so bad. They were following. you know, it's not like they said, well, they tried to, I guess, in some instances where they tried to rebel, and you know, that was taken care of with earthquakes and things like that, and killings, and but at the same time, like, there were people who said, you know, or people who did whine, but still followed, you know. Maybe a lot of the people who were whining were people who left Egypt with them, who were assimilated into the Israeli tribes, and who said, man, you know, as an Egyptian, I did have it good, you know, because I'm out here in the middle of nowhere. My family's 1,000 miles back that way, maybe, and I'm not going to see my loved ones anymore. Now I have to be assimilated. I have to do what I'm told. And maybe it's those people who started saying, well, you know, maybe we need to look at things differently, you know. We don't, it doesn't really say, you know, who were the true elders that Moses appointed. I mean, it gives us names and things, but maybe some of these people were partially from other cultures. We don't know.
But they followed. That's a very good, yeah, you bring up a good point.
So and even Job, like all the terrible things that happened to the righteous Job, you know, he still followed. You know, when he had a chance to curse God and die, you know, he chose not to. You know, even if you know, God would slay him, you know, still he would fall. So that's pretty powerful, you know. So I guess you can be a whiny baby and still get along, you know. You might be annoying, but you know.
There's almost a near mutiny in this chapter too. We had one in the latter chapter, this Parshah. Last chapter was last Parshah was a big rebellion, a big mutiny, and we came close in this Parshah as well. They had confronted Moses and Aaron. And it's kind of funny when in both accounts, like in last Parshah and this Parshah, I've noticed that when confronted with opposition, you know, when confronted with, you know, angry folks, Moses and in this Parsha, Aaron both fell to their faces and God appears. It's like it's like what an act of humility when your enemies come to take you and you fall on your face. In prayer, obviously, but or when opposition, it's like you lesson for me anyway. You didn't bolster up and take a stand. You went right to the ground, and God appeared. All right.
Well, I guess too what we forget. You know, I guess maybe I'm sympathizing with the people who are complaining, just for fun, of course.
Do so. No, that's what you're supposed.
But if you're hungry and starving and thirsty, I don't really care about religion and religious laws and ritual. Like, I need to have all those basic needs satisfied first before I need to think about philosophy and theology. You know, and what's it going to be? You know, hey, we want you guys to come to the tent meeting. Well, you know what? My kids are sick because they're all dehydrated and they're getting, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I need a drink of water first, Moses. You know. And, well, look, man, we're in the middle of the desert. Sorry. Well, I guess I ain't showing tonight then. I could barely move, you know? My lips are all splitting up.
I never caught this before, but the manna, one of the things the Israelites were complaining about was the manna, the bread from heaven. It didn't pass through their digestive systems. It went directly into their bodies. There was absolutely no waste produced by this bread.
Now, see, there's a lot of theories on that, too, which I thought about and read about. Of course, I'm going to try to get into a little bit of Greek mythology with the idea of ambrosia. Definitely, when in the Iliad and the Odyssey, both bodies of Patroclus, who was the war hero on the Greek side, and Hector, Hector, who was the hero on the Trojan side, both of those bodies were preserved by ambrosia, food of the gods. And anytime anybody was hungry, the gods would. It was kind of like a form of empowerment. Now you take something like that and think about Elijah out, and the angel of the Lord feeds him, this bread that he goes for how many days? It takes him that far, and it revives him. So I'm thinking, not that it was an intentional carryover, but an idea of that kind of thing in the literature. I mean, it definitely could have been something else. There's plenty of theories about what that actually was. But I think later on, not that it was added to, but through the retelling, it ended up being identified with that. It's like, hey, we ate this stuff in it, and it made us live and not die.
Yeah, they were afraid it was. They were afraid they were getting constipated. I think it was going to fill their bodies or fill their bellies, and they would get big, and they were afraid that it wouldn't. Yeah, they thought it was. They didn't know what to think of that. We haven't passed this bread. It's like, yeah, food that doesn't need digestion. It goes straight into your body, right into your limbs. That's some good food. Good food. Good food. Another thing I think that's interesting about this Parsha is normally you're not allowed to touch the remains of an offering. It makes you unclean. And in this Parsha we learn how the high priest will take the ash with fresh water and he becomes unclean, but when he sprinkles it on the net, when he sprinkles it on the people, they become purified. And one of the first services, if you will, that I went to at a synagogue, it was a bar mitzvah I was invited to, and this was the Parsha for that week, and he talked about how it seems perplexing that something that is considered unclean, or an act that seems unclean, would then later be used to purify. And he says, if you want to pull people out of the mud, you can't be afraid to get a little dirty. And that was kind of how I've always seen that part, that purification. In order to get people clean, you can't be afraid to get a little dirty. Nice little thing of courage, isn't it? Little suggestion or a bit of encouragement. Now, I might need a better man than I, Reuven, if you're listening, on this particular subject. But isn't this leaving the spring water mix? Isn't that what the later early Christian church tried to do with having the holy water at the front of the church? Isn't that kind of a symbolic wannabe practice, maybe of that in this parsha? Because you leave the water out there for the people to use. I don't know. I was raised Episcopalian, which is very similar to the Catholic Church, and you walk in, you dip your fingers in there, and you make the sign of the cross or whatever with the holy water. And I think at the the tabernacle, it was left there for people to use. I could be wrong. Yes, Reuven says, awesome. Would you, is it Hylas? Is Satan really a defiler? Huh. Yeah, I never thought of him that way. I mean, in Judaism, he's a working angel of God. He's doing God's will.
Welcome to the room, Brother John. How are you?
Brother John, where's he at?
He's the owl today.
All right.
Hey, how you doing? Thanks for having me.
Hey,
Glad
John.
you, John.
What's up, everybody?
We got other people here. There's Hylas. How you doing, sir? All right. Right, but Hylas, but I mean, he goes before God, and God gives him a specific task. You know, I mean, he's first mentioned in Exodus. I think when he confronts Baal, God sends an adversary. And Job, he stands before the heavenly court and is even seen separate from all those who come before. You know, he's specifically he's mentioned. I mean, he's just doing the will. He's just doing God's will. He's testing us. Wouldn't we be the true defilers? No.
Yeah, I heard it come up. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Speak.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mean, you got to think what Satan is. Satan was the most beautiful of all the angels. I mean, I can give you what I think, but I ain't God, so it don't really matter. You're going to have to read his word, but when it comes down to it, Satan's just pleasure. When you seek after pleasure, I mean, what does Satan do? He makes himself God. Why was he kicked out, right? He tried to be God, and that just ain't possible. But that is unwittingly doing the Lord's will. He has a function to perform, and it's all just a drama. So, in the end, it don't matter. It's not that serious, but he is an enemy. He's your enemy. If he's God's enemy or not, it don't matter. He thinks he is, and he's your enemy. So, you got to choose a master. If you don't, God says, if you're not with me, you must be against me.
Yeah.
Well, that was a pretty good sermon, but I think what
Where did he
happens
get
is
kicked out of? The Playboy Mansion or something? Where was he trying to sneak
I
into?
think that seriously in response to that, I think what happens is we take a lot of our modern views, especially anything after the 1st century, and impress it on the religious literature. Granted, there are tons of ideas out there about evil spirits, especially out of Assyria, much older than the idea of Satan, and a lot of those ideas have crept into the theology along with Christian ideas about it. So at the time of, say, Maccabees, when King Antiochus was fighting, so naturally we can't be saying, oh, God attributed all this to that. God isn't evil. God would never allow this. So then a lot of that, with the Christians, started being displaced onto the devil, which prior to the 1st century, all this stuff I can prove. And I got a friend who's doing large research project. It took him 2 years on the occult and where all this stuff comes from. And a lot of it ends up being false confessions of the early church when heretics were fighting against one another and church officials were fighting against one another. So you want to demonize somebody, who are you going to label it as? Your enemy. So what happens, yes, that out there, what we don't understand is the enemy. In Old Testament literature, and in the Tanakh, it's much different. Because here you have a personality who is kind of like the prosecutor. He hangs out into the bathrooms and makes sure that what you say about God is what you really think. So, you know, he might say, hey, consider the servant Job. He's righteous. There's none like him on the earth. You know what? I bet you that he's just doing it because you're giving him all this stuff. And God says, no way. So then the deal starts. So he performs that role. Anything else beyond that is not out of Judaism, but is an attachment and influences from other cultures. Large portions of it. All this stuff with the occult, baloney. I can prove it. Like one of the huge, who is that? Todd, Jordan, you might know the guy. Todd, the evangelicals who had him in his churches talking about the occult ended up turning into a big fake.
Todd Bentley?
No.
I hear you, Wayman. It's all malarkey. I agree.
Oh, they loved it. They rolled in it about the Illuminati, all this stuff. And churches, Baptist churches, had this guy come in and speak. You know what? He's making the whole thing up, and that's a lot of what it was. New Testament literature, you couldn't swing a cat by the tail. You couldn't swing a cat by the tail without hitting a demon. You know, and it was because the Assyrians and the Greeks, not, you know, even Judaism had incantation bowls because of influences from other cultures. It's not meant that this huge thing is there. They allowed it to be there. They allowed it to be there within themselves. And when you know, even Christ casts out the demon, what's he do? He casts it out of a person. You know, and the person comes to his senses, you know, of all the tomfoolery that he's accepted, maybe.
I don't recall that guy's last name, but he sounds like an occult version of the Ergen Canner, is false ex-Islamist jihad bullshitter, and ex-president of Liberty. You're familiar with that drama, right?
I just looked it up. John Todd. You all got to listen to his lectures just for the thrill of it. It was awesome. This guy rolled in this stuff, and he would not stop. And any church he went to, he added to it until he was found out. Here, I'll post a link on Wikipedia. And a lot of the views, you laugh, but a lot of the views about the Illuminati comes from guys like these. And they profit off it. They make millions. You should see all the Illuminati books. They get republished from like the 40s and even earlier. Like there's some stuff from the 1400s. You know, and a lot of accusations about Jews, like, oh, I've seen Jews stabbing the host, and so they must be evil because, you know, and they, oh, the Jews were beating my kids. A lot of that hatred did come from stuff like that. And it was all spread from hatred because people didn't want to reflect on themselves and what they themselves were doing. It's amazing. And when that research comes out and my buddy has it, I'll be sure to present it the best way I can, maybe even have him on a video.
It's the same with the witch trials. That was an outside influence, a snake oil salesman that sold, that, you know, found the devil in every corner that he could possibly.
I would ask our gentleman here, where did you get that? Where does that come from, and where does that start? Where the Satan was the highest of angels and all that, and where do you think Paul heard that from, if it came from Paul? And where do you think the New Testament writers heard that from, if it came from them? Because it's not found in Judaism.
Yeah, there's no war in heaven. There are no such thing as rebelling angels, or for that matter, angels that have free will in Judaism. That's like the Valhalla. The war in heaven is, to me, it smacks of Valhalla, which is that's the Nordic heaven. Basically, it's what do you know? You die in battle here, so you can go die in battle in heaven. You know, the fight continues. The struggle must continue.
Wayman, what is that king's name that the Protestants, they interpret this passage in the Old Testament? It's actually talking about an earthly king, and it talks about how he was in the Garden of Eden, but really it's just poetic, talking about how he was in a good position, but now God's going to bring him down or whatever because he thought that he was greater than God. But it's talking about an earthly king, but Protestants have tried to fish for this story about Satan falling from heaven, and they sort of try to read Satan into this passage. Idol Smasher might know what I'm talking about.
Yes, sir. It's the
Isaiah, right?
Isaiah 14. He's talking to Nebuchadnezzar.
Yep.
And in context, it's obvious.
Yeah.
And how art thou, O day star, son of morning? How art thou fallen from heaven, O day star, son of morning? You know,
That's right, right. Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Chaldeans. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
So you take that, add to it, and all of a sudden it becomes a New Testament mythology coming out on how the wars in heaven happen, added to Isaiah. And Paul gets it, and he reproduces it in the New Testament as fact. So this is what my buddy's finding out. A lot of this stuff that he's finding out comes exactly that way. People write fiction stories. People write mystery novels. People write crime novels. Pulp Fiction was huge, where, you know, people, oh, you know, these people were performing satanic cult whatever. Then all of a sudden it starts popping up in crime. Well, what do you think criminals are reading? Detective stories. You know, so he's making these kinds of connections. And it all comes from very shaky ground. And you can go back, if you go back far enough, you can find out where it started and where people added to and how it became fact. It's amazing.
You know why modern translations, I know the Jehovah's Witnesses, their Bible calls him the devil in Isaiah, but even the King James versions that are out now, they don't say Lucifer. A lot of them now, because if you can say, if the Romans can look at Isaiah, see morning star, and say that must be Lucifer, you go to the end of the Christian Bible and there's the Revelation, and Jesus in the next to last paragraph of the book, he says, I am the bright and capital morning capital star. And that's you know, that's just kind of weird to me, that if the Romans felt that, you know, Revelation is okay, because I know there's some debate even with the Eastern Orthodox and whatnot, that if you could put morning star in for Isaiah and say that's Lucifer, would it not be logical to do the same thing with Revelation?
Well, that's the thing too, like you're saying.
Yeah, spook people is what it did. People said, right. Like, I read it and I was a little shocked myself.
So Lucifer is a Latin term. What's it doing in a Hebrew text?
It's a Latin god. Look at J-Dubs. Now he's a fiery commie.
That's Benny.
Oh, okay. Boy, he defiled my image, huh?
Oh, it's Benny. I'm there. Yeah, that's right.
For those interested, I did find that article out of BAR. It's called The Mystery of the Nishkatan. Why did King Hezekiah of Judah destroy the bronze serpent that Moses fashioned and protect the Israelites? It's on Biblical Archaeology Review, March, April 2007, Volume 33, Number 2. And it's a great article. I'll see if I can pull it offline for some of you guys who I'm connected to, and I'll swipe it for you. I can't like publish it. I can send it to you privately, and you can read that over. It's pretty good.
Cool.
And also, too, speaking of Revelation, probably one of the true Jewish forms of Revelation, like the Book of Revelation, would be the War Scroll out of the Dead Sea Scrolls, where the teacher of righteousness actually takes up arms and, you know, goes after the wicked priest, and how the final battle is all going to go down, right, to what the people are wearing, the trumpets and all that kind of stuff. So we want to read a real form of Revelation straight out of Judaism. That would be the text to read, definitely. And it hadn't been played with because all these texts have been hidden. And the idea with John, I'm not too worried about him, and I'll tell you why. Each section had its own form of revelation on the trauma that they were going through. So, you know, they see the destruction of the temple in 90 AD by the Romans, or 90 ACE, or however you want to say it, where it was just all slice and dice, and bodies were being stacked up like cordwood. It's terrible. And reading more by Josephus. So of course, John is going to be petrified and terrible about all these terrible things that are happening. He's going to have his own form of ideas about it, you know. So I'm not all that bothered. Same thing was happening to later on, like modern day, Native Americans here in the U.S. They had Black Elk Speaks, which is an excellent book. He too had a vision about his people that he portrayed, and he went back and told it. They formed this ritual from his vision, and it was to unite the nation under these atrocious circumstances that were being happened. And so those kinds of things sprout out from the subconscious during these times of trauma. So I'm not really worried about that. All the stuff from Ezekiel was from the Babylonian captivity. He was told to do like little reenactments and plays by God. Even to like, oh, go before the city and roast this bread on human dung. And he's like, God, he says, nothing unclean ever touched my lips. Can I use cattle dung? And God relents, and he says, yeah, you can use cattle. So all these things, it's really amazing how it works.
Hey, can you tell me about the War Scroll again?
Well, I'll read it. They got it online now. You can see it. It's amazing.
Yeah, well, I might read it first before I comment, but does it mention the liar? So there's three figures in the Dead Sea Scrolls: the wicked priest, the righteous teacher, and a liar. Is that covered in that scroll that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think that the liar ends up being a person like who the sons of Eli were called. Troublemakers. It translates into like troublemakers and scoundrels. So that whole idea of Beelzebub and all that kind of stuff translates into that sort of thing, scoundrels.
Yeah, but I think that particular piece was about Jesus being the righteous teacher. The wicked priest was Agrippa the Great, Herod Agrippa the Great, and the liar was Paul. So my thinking was that was a play on that particular real world scenario written after those events. So probably post 44 AD.
Well, I think even Eisenman, who writes a ton on it, on early Christianity, Dead Sea Scrolls, and he was actually the scholar who actually fraudulently, some believe, they had no idea where it got, was the first one to get it published. But getting back to the thing, some believe that it was actually the teacher, the Qumran, the Qumran community, whoever that was. It doesn't have to be Jesus. A lot of times people say, well, look, Jesus did this and this. He was associated with John the Baptist, so maybe he did come from that community, or maybe he just had contact with them. We don't know. But then there's plenty of...
But there is something we do know from the biblical side. We know that James, his brother, or allegedly his brother, becomes a major Jewish, or we're told he's a Christian leader, right, around 60 AD or thereabouts. Now you just think about the reality of that. Well, now in the Gospel of Thomas, it actually, the disciples asked Jesus, who's going to be a leader if you go? And he says, James the Just. Well, think about this scenario that we get from the biblical side. The biblical side says that James the Just is the Christian bishop in Jerusalem from about 60 AD on to the fall of Jerusalem. Does it make sense that the Pharisees would entertain a Christian with bishop and a Christian community in their midst?
I don't think they would be particularly bothered by it, because you read the text of James, it reads a lot more Hebrew than some of the other New Testament literature, and other than Mark. I would say that the writer Mark and James are probably the most Hebrew, if you can say that, out of all the writings in the New Testament. So some people even think that James the Just could have been the teacher of righteousness in the Qumran community. And
I think he was. That's what I'm suggesting.
Yeah.
But then,
like others that I've read say that the Church of Jerusalem was destroyed in the fall of Jerusalem. That's how the Apostle Paul, in his version of early Christianities, plural, early Christianities, started going, because the Church of Jerusalem, who were trying to put the clamp down even on Paul, which is why had to go to the mission field because he couldn't get along with anybody. He's arguing with Peter, arguing with everybody over doctrine and everything, and created quite a stir. And the only reason why we read so much about him is because most of his letters is the stuff that survived.
Yeah, no, yeah, no. See, I don't buy into the story that Christianity existed pre-70 AD. This doesn't make any sense. It's more likely that it came in later.
Well, the idea of Christology and the building of it did come in later, because there was no end to it. We're still building it today. That's the New Testament. You can label it Christology, who people thought, the study of who people thought Jesus was.
Yeah.
And we're still doing it.
I will say this.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Rob.
I was just going to say my position was that Nerva was the agent that actually architected the New Testament, and that was the beginning of Roman Christianity. So the Romans made it up. That's my position.
People have been trying to escape it ever since.
Yeah,
So one thing I say about the Christians is no matter how much force you put on them, they tried to find a better way than what they had. I mean, at first it was with the Reformation, which wasn't that big of a league, more of a slither.
Yeah.
But I have a soft spot for the Amish who came from the Scandinavian, from the Northlands, and for the Quaker and the the Pilgrims, who didn't even believe in a king, wouldn't, it was like God or nothing to them, and and they're real big on avoiding all idolatry, which Roman Christianity has a tendency to adopt. Yeah,
and I mean, if you just even Google Christianity denominations, you'll find that there's 41,000. That sort of says that says to you clearly that it's a religion with an itch.
That's cool.
A religion with an itch, and they're all trying to find a better answer because it's not satisfying the innate condition. And to me, that's a very telling statistic. So
well, yeah, but there's probably tons of Jewish sects too, right?
No, but they're not as diverse. No, there's nowhere near the diversity that Christianity leaves the rest of them for dead. I mean, how many Jewish sects would there be? There wouldn't be that many at all, would there? Would they go higher than 10?
I think you might say there are 5. It would be Orthodox, Conservative, Reform, and Reconstruction. There's 4. Those are the only ones I know of, and I have a tendency to lean to the Orthodox myself.
Yeah.
Within those communities, there are extremist groups that go off and form. Definitely there is definitely Jewish fundamentalism. I read a book about it.
Well, that's.
I mean, we don't like to talk about that. You know what I'm saying? Like, honestly, we don't. I would like to think that the only fundamentalists that exist are probably Muslim and Christian fundamentalists, but that's not true. Unfortunately, fundamentalism is huge.
In Judaism, it's just more about keeping law. I mean, even in the state of Israel, you'll have Jews driving around on Saturday, and if you drive through the wrong neighborhood, they'll throw rocks at your car as you're driving through. Those are my kind of. That's where I'm at right there. I'm like, yeah. I don't know, but yeah, and it's because you don't do anything on Saturday. And if you're going to drive around, and you're Jewish, I even say if you're not Jewish, I think they would probably throw it at anybody's car. Driving around, I had a friend of mine who went and visited Eretz Yisrael not too long ago, and she went down to ask for, and she wasn't even thinking, she's not Jewish or anything, but she wasn't even thinking about it, and asked the lady at the hotel, why can't I get on a computer anywhere? And they just and she said they looked at me dumbfounded, and it hit me, it's Shabbat,
Well, see, my grandfather, he was a fundamentalist minister. He did all that too. He would not cook on Sunday. He, like my grandmother and everybody, they would make all their meals on Saturday. They would take a nap on Sunday. They wouldn't do any. We couldn't go out and ride our bikes. Nothing when we were at Grandma and Grandpa's on Sunday.
Okay, hold on a second. Benny, do you have Prescott blocks? Benny, All right, okay, Benny. Can you leave so we can get Prescott in here? Because Prescott, Benny, you can watch from the outside if you want. If someone wants to give him the link.
Prescott, we are full at the moment. You are always, as always, more than welcome to come in. But we are at max capacity.
All right, Benny, I'll give you a shout out. Benny's awesome. Okay, Benny, come on, let's get going. We need a spot.
Benny from Europe. Thank you so much, Benny from Europe, for sacrificing your spot for Mr. Prescott.
Yeah, he's a cool dude, that Benny.
All right, Benny.
Wow.
Benny, I love you, Benny, but you got to go, Benny. All right, Prescott, you can get in here now.
I think if you're going to look at
testing. Sorry.
There you go.
Okay, good.
How you doing, man? Isaac, if I remember.
Aleichem. Yeah, I guess.
I think if you're going to talk a revelation in the Jewish narrative, you shouldn't look to the Dead Sea Scrolls. You should look to the Sinai event. I mean, it's referred to all the time throughout all Jewish literature I've ever read as the revelation at Sinai.
Well, maybe I think I labeled it wrong, because you're right. Definitely revelation is something different. I guess what I mean is apocalypticism. You know what I mean? Which is a little bit different.
Yes, sir.
So you're right about revelation where you're receiving something. Apocalypticism is a look towards the end, But I guess originally the name apocalypticism means revelation. So it's kind of, I guess the way we view it today in definition is different than how it's actually should be viewed. You know what I mean? Like it's strange. But when you think of apocalypticism, you think of like end time stuff and looking forward to the futuristic kind of cleansing kind of things,
Didn't apocalyptic mean like hidden meaning or something revealed?
How's your evening going, Prescott? Welcome to the room.
Just not.
Path of Abraham, how are you? How's your day been?
Well, thank you. Long day. Can you hear me?
Cult occlusion. Yes, sir.
Loud and clear.
Okay, sorry. My mic's just kind of acting up. Yeah, my day's been good. It's not over. I have to pray soon, so maybe I can get some sleep soon.
Apocalypse is the end, and the hidden part. Yeah, occult. Yeah, that would be hidden.
Where's Jordan?
Yeah, I think it's a Greek word.
Yeah, where's Jordan? Because Wikipedia says literally, it says literally from Greek is a disclosure of knowledge, a lifting of the veil or revelation.
You've got the Apocryphon of John, and what that translates to is the secret message from John, or like a secret revelation from John.
Who's John?
John Zebedee.
1 second. Sorry.
That was from Nag Hammadi.
Does someone want to touch on that? Who's John? Someone want to explain?
I'm John.
I want your secret knowledge.
Yeah, the John that's referred to in the Apocryphon of John, which is a text that comes from the Nag Hammadi find, that's John Zebedee, the Apostle John.
Is that the same John that's the Messiah of the Mandeans?
I don't know the answer to that, but it's the same John that's John 1:1 and John of Patmos, and it's that same dude, the Apostle John. The two brothers, John and James.
There's two Johns. Sorry, Reuben. There's two different Johns. John the Immerser is the Mandean Messiah, right?
Well, let's not forget John the Baptist, right? There's him too, right?
Oh, there's three Johns. Oh, this is getting confusing now.
We have John the Baptist.
Yeah, sorry.
We have the book. Who wrote the book of John? What would you call the book of the Gospel, John? What do
John
you-
Zebedee. John Zebedee.
And then we have John the Revelator, who wrote Revelation.
John Zebedee.
Same guy?
I think so.
Oh, I'm talking about John the Baptist. That makes sense if he's called John the Baptist. That's what I'm talking about. But that's not the same guy who's the apocalypse guy?
Yeah, the dude that got his head on the silver platter, right? That's who you're talking about?
I don't know.
There is John.
Yeah.
Reuben's got it here. John the Baptist, John Zebedee, as Rob was discussing, and then John the Elder. And I'm assuming John the Elder would be the writer of Revelation. Christians believe John Zebedee wrote John's Gospel 1. John and Revelation. John the Elder wrote 2 and 3 of John. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about John the Elder. I thought it was the same dude, or it's alleged it was the same dude. Who's John the Elder, Reuben?
Yeah, that's what I always thought too, Rob. That the same dude wrote the same book. That wrote all those books.
No,
Yeah.
Revelation was written like 500 years after the crucifixion.
Oh, okay. Then yeah, unless he time traveled, then.
Oh, who's this guy, John the Presbyter? Might
Is
be
that
an
where Presbyterian came from?
This might be alternative author of some of the Johannan books.
He was a tree.
The tree.
Okay,
Oh,
John,
Reuben says they're the same person. Oh.
the presbyter and the elder are the same John.
Has he got what's his era, Reuben? What's his dating? John the Elder. Do we have a date? 100 to 140 CE. So he's post. He'll be after Nerva's gone. So he's an adjustment then. So he's actually, so that's fabrication then, isn't it? Because it is represented as John Zebedee's writing in the Bible, I think. 2 and 3. So, Reuben, are you saying that, no it isn't, Rob? So you're saying that John 2 and 3 in the Bible is acknowledged as being written by a later author? So
John
they are written by the elder. But couldn't that be the same person at a later stage? How do you tie it into the later date? Sorry,
I was
just curious.
Sorry. Which Bible is this?
We're talking about like the New Testament, the Christian Bible.
Yeah, but which one? Like what sect of Christianity? Like Orthodox?
This usually encompasses all of them, doesn't it?
Oh, I don't know. I was just curious. I only have Orthodox Christian friends, and like Syrians, Greeks, and Ethiopian Orthodox all have different Bibles as well. So I don't.
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, they have like the Book of Enoch and some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the folks down in where is it? Ethiopia, because they were sort of disconnected, I think, for a period, and that's why Enoch survived a little longer. I think it was the first century. That was a bit of first century censorship by around the Jerusalem community, and the Enoch group were disenfranchised, or it could even be later. Actually, that's possible. Could have been a work by Constantine's time. But certainly there's a disconnect between the people in Ethiopia and the main Jewish folk in Jerusalem.
Yeah, the Ethiopians, like the old communities of the southern regions, so the communities in Saudi Arabia, Yemen, and Ethiopia were already established by the time of the Second Temple period. There's already flourishing Jewish communities there. Even Jewish, Yemen, Oman, and Saudi Arabia was a Jewish state and thus Ethiopia as well, in the
What's
Second
the-
Temple period. So
Okay, so is there an early or an approximate date when they were in play? Were they in play before 1 AD, or is it before 100 AD?
before, no, like I'm talking about like 400 BC.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, during like the Babylonian exile, even before the Babylonian captivity, there's established communities.
Right, so that could explain, so if Enoch's been legitimised, say, around 160 BC, which is when I say it was written, then that could have found its way down into Ethiopia, and 1st century AD is where they decided to mark it as Apocrypha, and because the Ethiopian community are out of reach, perhaps that's why there was a disconnect for some reason. That's why they didn't update. Yeah, so that fits. Okay, that's cool.
Isn't there like a community that says that they have the Ark of the Covenant or something? They protect it.
Yeah, that's Ethiopian Orthodox. There's a city, or I guess it's maybe like a village or a town in Ethiopia called Aksum, and that's where they say it is because. But it's also from their history where because Sheba was a country that was basically Yemen and Ethiopia, and so like everybody knows the Queen of Sheba, and she met Solomon, and then she came back to Ethiopia with Sheba with monotheism, and that opened up the roots why Jews settled so far south in Yemen and Ethiopia so early on, because there's already an established monotheistic Jewish nation or kingdom state there. And so, but the Ethiopian Orthodox legend goes is that when Babylon, or I guess around when Syria sacked Jerusalem, right before that happened, they shifted the Ark to Ethiopia. But that's not in any of the Jewish. That's not in any of the Jewish history, even the Ethiopian Jewish or the Jews of Yemen. It's not part of our history either. It's only the Christians that believe that. And it's in a church in Aksum.
It's kind of funny how those ideas come about, because if you look at how Solomon's portrayed biblical literature and how much the conservative priesthood disliked them and wrote against them so much, it's like, wait a minute, the guy had a bazillion wives, and then all of a sudden the Queen of Sheba is going to come for a visit, and all of a sudden she's going to convert after seeing all of his wives from all these different countries that he tried to associate with. Make trade deals with. In early format, that was the early form of bribery and buying out your government was, trading women and things like that, so you could have better ties to other nations and trade and all that. Oh, he rolled in it. He loved it.
So, but what I found interesting was the reference to the Ark of Covenant. I thought that was actually lost in the days of Babylon. So they had some sort of room. And no one could go in there but the high priest. And I was under the understanding that it was actually lost at that point, but then they still held a room back in the days of Jerusalem. But then you've got Cyrus's son, Cambyses, or something like that. He took over the Egyptian area, so you've got the Persian Empire expanding into Egypt. So, and sponsoring Judaism at that point. So it's not unreasonable to think that expansion had an influence that extended down to Ethiopia, and that might have been the event that brought Judaism to the region, the Persian expansion. That sort of makes some sense.
I always heard the Ark was lost when Rome destroyed the Second Temple.
No, the Second Temple didn't have the Ark. It was lost during the Babylonian captivity. It's hidden in the temple. Okay, so there's different theories, but the traditional theory is that it's hidden in the catacombs under the Temple Mount.
Yeah, I'd hold that it doesn't exist at all.
But the Second Temple never had it. It was void of it.
And it gives you extra clout if you claim to own the Ark, and everything that comes with it.
Yeah, it's legitimacy.
Yeah, they love it. Everybody would love to own it, I'm sure. to build something, you know.
Ethiopia.
Well, I gotta go to bed, so I got work in the morning. I'd love to stay up. I could stay up all night and chat about this stuff. I love it so much. If you capture me, do it on my Wayman 29 Google Plus channel. I'm not advertising here, but this is kind of like my personal channel, and I end up getting all my grandma sees this and everything under Alfred, you know, because it's my real name. And if you can, go over to my other one and send the invites, because I get them all mixed up, and I end up coming in on you guys on this one, and I can't figure it out and lose the links. But really, thanks for inviting, and thanks for sending those links. I really appreciate it.
Take care, bro. See you later, man.
Come back again. We'll try and do this on Thursdays if all goes well. So definitely. Like to see you again.
What was his other name? Wayman 3 or something? Or
I think he said 23.
I've seen him around. I know the guy. We talked so much. I rarely get a chance to see him anymore.
yeah, he's got some good stuff though. Very interesting.
Here's a little something to get us on Parshah real quick. Just a Parshah thing. You know, the red heifer is one of the teachings in this week's Torah portion, and you know, it brings up statutes and the difference between like a statute and other things in the law. As a statute is used in connection with all laws and ordinances whose reason is not disclosed to us. And people have tried to work it out throughout history, but yeah, there are certain things that the Hebrew folk have to do that there's not any explanation given in the Torah, the written or the oral. There's no real explanation given. It's a matter of, you know, because I said so.
What are the things they have to do?
Sorry.
Well, I was going to mention the phylacteries, not the tzitzit, but the
Tefillin.
Tefillin, thank you. Where they wrap. There's a ribbon. I want to say it's shark skin, or they wrap around their left arm and hold.
It's leather.
It's leather. Okay, and then there's a box.
Right. I've seen a rabbi doing that.
Yeah, there's no explanation as to why it's like that. Why, you know, there's really no. And the red heifer is another one. Why a red heifer without blemish? It's never really given to us.
I suspect it's probably because there's a little bit of a discipline, and I would think if it's genuine stuff, right? It's about focusing the mind. That little box on the head.
Yeah, the tefillin have a rational reason to them.
Really?
Yeah, but it's things like the red heifer, or like shatnez is like not wearing clothes of like mixed wool and linen. Like if I don't know how to explain it. Like if you're wearing like a shirt with it can't be made, or like any form of clothing, it can't be made of mixed fibers of wool and linen. So it's like what you would call like irrational laws. Like the majority of the laws in the Torah can be rationalized for some way in different categories, but there's some where they're just like you just do them because they're an act of submission to God.
What's
you would think the mixing of I was going to say the mixing of the fabric. Couldn't you see that as keeping it pure? Couldn't that be like logical? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Well, not really, because the high priest garments requires them to be mixed wool and linen. So regular Israelite garments, they can't be, but a high priest garment specifically has to be. So.
Would that be something we could compare to the priest taking the ashes of the red heifer and sprinkling them on the people, that he becomes unclean so that the nation can be pure?
Yeah, I suppose. I don't know.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, but if it's not explained, then it can't be valid, because the whole function is to enlighten the individual So you have to give the individual some cue or something that can be related back to the real experience. And if that doesn't exist, then it's a fabrication for political reasons. That doesn't mean empires necessarily. It could be just simply a control mechanism. So unless there's some valid, knowable, so like with that tying of with the leather and the box, well, yeah, that would be a process where the person that's doing it would have to focus the mind. So
that's the purpose of them. The purpose of them are literally you're supposed to wear them throughout the day. Not everybody is able. Everybody does that, but you're supposed to wear them out of the day so your mind doesn't stray. The literal concept is to keep yourself focused.
Yeah.
So that your heart and mind is directed towards one goal throughout the day.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
They're a physical reminder. There's nothing intrinsically mystical about them, but they're a physical symbol and reminder to be on the straight path.
Yeah. So in that example, you don't need the explanation because the practice will actually reveal itself in time. So you see between the instruction and the understanding, everything's completely contained, whether you use words or not. But where you have an example that doesn't have any, reality, and so it doesn't bear out, like the example you were given where the priests actually dress in mixed woolen clothing or whatever it was, that to me sounds like something that would be political, not spiritual.
I guess the best way that I could explain it would be it's like that in the kosher laws, they're acts of asceticism. Like they might in themselves not be intrinsically what you could say rational, but the motivation behind them is to engage in a form of separation of the world from the world. It's restraint.
Yeah, well, separation from the world is valid. Gnostic Jesus would say the same thing. You have to sort of still the mind or rest the mind. And although, I'm sort of in two minds on that because I think that the sensorial experience is still valid in a meditative state, but you sort of, maybe it's about separating from the worrisome nature of the world. The things that sort of distract the mind, perhaps. Then that would be valid. That would be accurate.
I would say that's a normative Jewish response to the issue.
That makes sense.
Prescott's brain dead on Thursdays. Never could get the hang of Thursdays, huh?
Benny's back.
Benny!
Good old Thor's Day.
Well, I want to make an announcement today. My best friend, who's out in Long Island there, him and his wife just had a baby today.
Congratulations!
Mazel tov.
Only health.
Thank you. I will forward your blessings to them. Her name is Ella Grace.
Ella Grace. What a beautiful name.
Yeah.
Hella Grace or Ella Grace?
Ella, E-L-L-A.
Close.
That's nice.
Oh, they were over by me, huh? Long Island.
Yeah.
Suffolk or Nassau?
He's in Suffolk.
Oh, okay.
Like I said, next time I visit him, I'm going to stop by you and we're going to meet in person finally.
All right, sure.
That's cool.
Yeah, I was just outside tonight. There's a beautiful display of fireflies. God.
I saw that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's awesome.
We get some out west. Not quite as I did when I was living in West Virginia. You could get tons of them up there, but out here, they're not quite as common.
On to the conversation that I left. It went south, huh?
Striking the rock. Yeah. That's something that happened this Parsha.
That's it's for me. It's like such an amazing experience. Like it's hard to rationalize the idea. It's like so like for me as somebody who's very observant of Torah law to say that our master teacher prophet committed a sin. But to me, that's why it's so beautiful, because we don't have this erroneous notion, in my opinion, of like these perfect individuals that walk the earth. Even the greatest of the greatest had character flaws because they're still human. And I think I could relate to that more than relating to somebody who's like, we follow this master teacher because they were flawless in everything they did and everything they did, because how can you aspire to that kind of idea? But I can aspire to somebody who had maybe one mess up, one recorded mess up, but I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's an amazing experience.
Yeah. So what that is, that speaks to equality.
Exactly. It's like when you hear it's like when you hear like Muslims talk about Muhammad. He was like as whatever you could think about his teachings, but like the way they talk about him is like he had no flaws, he was a perfect individual, he could do no wrong kind of idea.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like it just makes you question it to begin with. But if from your most holy text, the holiest prophet ever lived, in black and white the text says he screwed up and God got angry at him and punished him for it. It's kind of like, it's not saying it validates it in any way, but at least it gives it some credibility to not being some, piece of propaganda.
Yeah, and again, it's the two wolf story. They're in all of us, all that are human, and it just, what it does, it makes you realize when you actually get that concept and you say, well, not only is it the great leveler, but it's also the great potential, because I am that I am. So you can sort of look around and you can say, well, that beggar or that person struggling in life, that's me. You can look at someone that's really succeeding and you say, that also is within me, So that's what I think the powerful message there is.
That's cool, Rob.
Well, it's just real, mate. That's what it is. We all have this potential to really live up to the potentials of our forefathers, in every form. It's become, and so that's the premise for free will. That's free will there, right there.
The thing that always gets me about Western religion, and a lot of the Christian religion, is the need to compare yourself with God. It's not, because in Torah we're reminded that God is absolute unity and perfection beyond contemplation. But in the Christian point of view, we often get a God is perfect and you're a sinner. You're a slithering.
It's like an abusive relationship.
And how can you compare yourself to something you can't even comprehend?
Yeah.
And it's just such a and it's like a ceiling. It puts a ceiling on your potential as a human being.
It also sort of says that, it basically paints you as flawed, and then you've got to escape flawedom to this grandeur, but you can't get any. Well, yeah, like you say, there's a ceiling, but that's because it's a false premise. That's just not the way it is. The way it is that we have this potential, for good and evil in all of us, and that's the way it is. And they're, as far as I can tell, they're innate. The thing about the good in us is that it's its own entity, so it's self-contained. It doesn't have any relationship with evil. That's the other part of the story. I relate it back to primitive, survival instincts, but so the good is an entity within its own, and you could arguably reach that sort of level. You could actually be the good or the God, but it would require some significant self-awareness and commitment, and you'd have to manage that other part of you, because that's always going to be in you as well. So that's what a human is. That's the way I see it anyway. So, you know, it's not like the God's anything better than we can be. We can be that, you know, that perfect, loving nature. That's our potential. And that's what we should strive for. And if we do that, and we regard everyone else with that capacity, then you've got equality, you know, and with that equal respect, hopefully.
We strive with that struggle, don't we? I mean, we want to gaze back at the viewer. We want to elevate ourselves in the world to God, and yet, you know, we're reminded that we are separated and that God is hidden from our mind, whatnot, and yet we're also taught at the very same time that He is as close to us as our breath.
Absolutely. It is. Well, the Gnostic Jesus would say we are the gods, I guess, in a sense. We're also the devils. It's intrinsic to who the human condition is. You know, so the Gnostic Jesus would hold that there's nothing up in the sky and nothing in the sea. It's within. So it's part of the fabric of the human condition. And the Cherokee would agree with that. They'd say it's the two wolves are within. So it's part of the story, and that's what I think that teaching that you're talking about means. It's so close. It's because it's part of who the human is.
Got to keep them small, keep them scared.
Well, that's what the Empire's like. But here's what we say to them, you know, F them.
Here's to Luke Skywalker.
Yeah.
The death of Miriam, one of the greatest leaders in Jewish history, didn't make it to the Promised Land either.
So who's Miriam? What's her story?
Miriam is the sister of Moses.
And she was a prophetess.
Yes.
Okay.
This is it was saying she was buried on the last leg of the journey, the last, not leg, the third and last stage of the journey from Sinai to the Promised Land. It started at Kadesh and continued around the land of Edom, which we read about today, and ended at the heights of Pisgah in the country of Moab under the Dead Sea and the fords of Jordan. That's where she died.
So she's in the Jewish territories when she dies, right?
Well, on the way to the Promised Land, the last, just before they came out of the wilderness.
They haven't entered Canaan yet.
All right. Yeah. Well. Yeah.
They're in the wilderness, the desert. Yeah.
I know.
What does she bring? Does she bring anything to the story in terms of the spiritual guidance, or is she just a figure with a bit of a history story? Is there any wisdom that comes with her?
Was chosen to be the prophet to Pharaoh, and Moses represent God. I mean, yes, she does. There's more to her story than
there is. Off the top of my head, I'd have to look it up, to be honest. She's definitely not a major contributor to the theology, but she does play a role. More of a leadership role, I would say, than anything.
Well, that's actually interesting then. So that puts does that put a woman in an equal position to a man then, in her story?
Yeah, there's only in the Exodus account, there's only 3 prophets, and one of them was a woman.
Cool. Well, that's good, because see, that's one of the big problems with the Christian story is that they play this male. Well, I think it's introduced by the Persians and the Empire influence, but they play out this role of distinction between the sexes when it comes to these matters of spirituality, and that's not correct. That's that's a wrong teaching, and it sort of follows the teaching, the model of a baboon community where the alpha male and this empire mindset, which puts the alpha male at the top of the tree and the priesthood and all this sort of crap. So that's interesting. So that means that the pre-Babylon Judaism then sponsors equality.
I think that my rabbi taught me that women are considered spiritually superior
Then men, yeah.
I agree with that. I actually agree with that.
Women don't have
maybe not superior is the right word, but they're on a higher level. That's for sure.
Well, yeah, you're actually right, because I think the equality status plays out, but in their life story, and because they're the actual birth giver, they're much higher in terms of being the selfless individual more often than the male story. The male's more an insular, selfish type of a lifestyle compared collectively, just speaking collectively, with womankind. Womankind are more the love thy neighbour type, collectively. Oh, they can be bitches too, but
it's like if God wants to speak to man, it's grab him by the collar, get up in his face, and obey. And with a woman, it's like he tells her once and says it in a calm, soft voice, and only that's it. And men have to go daven, men have to do these things, and the women don't have to. Aside from maybe Shabbat, I don't think women are really required to pray or required to.
Yeah, women have to pray at least once a day, but they don't have to pray at specific times like men do.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
But everybody has to pray every day.
Well, so is prayer, what is prayer then from a pre-Babylonian's perspective? Is it more like meditation, or is it... What's the form of prayer?
I would say even post-Babylonian, that's what prayer is. Like, that's what prayer is for Judaism today, and that's what it is in the Torah. It's nothing as far as, like, you're not rectifying really anything in the world by your prayers, but all it is to keep you focused into home. It is like meditation. Like even... I don't know how else to describe it than meditation. I think it's a pretty accurate way of saying it. Like, it's a form of clearing your mind and setting it to a proper goal.
Okay, well,
and having it fixed throughout the day means that that's what's regulating your day. This kind of sense of sanity.
Great. Well, then that's valid. That's exactly correct.
Yeah.
Because meditation is so important to the whole human story. I mean, even the Dalai Lama said, if we could have meditation for 8-year-olds, within a generation we'd end war on the planet. And I tend to think he's right, 100% right.
It keeps yourself in check,
Yeah. Well, it brings you back to earth, if you like, or recenters you each day.
Yeah, so, exactly.
Yeah, rather than perhaps a Christian model might be, hey, God, come and do me this favour and buy me that nice, shiny new car.
Exactly, yeah, right. That's like heresy to us.
Yeah, well, and rightly so too. Yeah, so that's
it. It comes across to me like in Judaism, you have to search. Prayer is soul searching. You have to search. It's about know
thyself.
Yeah, but not just knowing it, but openly with your mouth to God, speaking and knowing and solidifying that knowledge of yourself and coming to terms with the wolves.
To me, it's like recognizing your limitations so you can overcome them in a way. It's not fooling yourself.
Yeah.
So it's submission, it's humility before God. But the reason you submit and be humble is to understand your own flaws in order that you can better yourself. It's not this idea of like, I'm not worthy, I suck, you're amazing. But you do that in order just so that you can have a clear mind and say, like, I have flaws, and this is how I could be better. And maybe not so specifically, but it's just, like you're saying, like a way to keep yourself in check and not being so arrogant and humble.
That's an authentic teaching then. That's really valid.
Now, in Judaism, we do hear, and that's one of the things that a lot of the atheists get onto theists for, is answering prayers, which basically means you ask God for something, God gives it to you, kind of a thing. Answering prayers, and it's all about requests, like you were saying. But in Judaism, there's actually a way to make a request. Isn't that what tzedakah is?
Yeah, but it's... Yeah, sorry.
No, please talk, please.
We do petition. That's for sure. But you do it in like different ways. Like you do like communal fasting. You give charity and this stuff. But you're not really expecting it as like, I'm going to do this, God, so you give me something. You do it as you do it as a selfless act in order to have some sort of merit. Yeah. But like you can't expect, but this is all in the context of like if there's like war or famine or like somebody's kidnapped. It's all these extreme circumstances. It's not like I really need this job or I need a new car or you know what I mean? Like that's would never seem as like a kind of kosher concept to petition God for. It would have to be something extreme, like famine, war, stuff like that.
Yeah. So nothing's added and nothing's ever taken away. So to me, the process is about awareness of the God reality, if you like, and we're not alone in that. That's across the population. So I guess you're probably, because you're subject to other people stepping up and meeting the requirement and being the good person as well, and you have no control over that, other than your actions may influence them. So that's the seed sower, sowing the seeds. Very interesting. So now that I'm learning about Judaism, I'm finding it, at least pre-Babylon, it sounds like it's the real deal.
Yeah, I think Jesus was a Jew. I do believe.
Oh, it was, mate. Yeah, definitely. And those Essene people, they practice the Torah's Nazarite tradition. So he's a carrier on of the Torah, I think, in some ways. I mean, from what I'm hearing about the Torah, it sounds like he's not out of sync with it at all. And I'm talking about the Jesus, not the one the Romans, the story the Romans told. Yeah. No, I'm talking about what's potentially the real person. And there doesn't seem to be too much of a disconnect at all.
Well, I kind of see Jesus as this way, and I've kind of gotten in trouble. Well, not trouble, but I kind of get flack from a lot of my Christian brethren when they. Isn't it great to be Noachide? When to me it was Jesus, or some of the things that are said about, or that Jesus says in the context of which all the information we have about the man was that he was preparing Israel for the end of the temple, and because there had to be, I mean, how are you going to keep Torah? We had this temple, we've come all this way, and then it's gone, and we're going to be spread out in the world. The kingdom of God is within you. That seemed to be, and that seemed to me, he's like, don't forget, it's in you. Don't, it was, in some ways I could see, Jesus' teaching as a reassurance to Israel. In many ways, some of the stuff I question a lot of especially the Roman accounts, don't seem Jewish at all. Tree killing, pig killing, I have a hard time with that. Yeah, I don't buy that. Yeah, no thanks.
No.
Pigs. Why would you kill a pig? He's not even allowed to eat them. Why would you kill a tree?
Jesus killed a tree and a pig? Why?
I've asked that amongst many Christians and bupkis. Yeah, Jesus walked up and saw a fig tree that had leaves. When he approached it, the tree didn't have fruit. So he cursed it, and by the end of the day, it withered up. Another account is that it withered up immediately. And it even says in the Gospels, one of the Gospels, it says, it was not the time for figs to, or it was not the time of the year for figs to the figs weren't in season.
Yeah.
He cursed a tree that died.
Yeah, but you see, what my research conclusion was that the Romans wrote the New Testament and they used the Jesus teaching. So it's them, that's a Roman notion. So the Romans are, you've got an original story from Jesus which lines up with the Nazarite tradition and the Torah, but then the Romans come in and then they take what they like and add their own magic stories, if you like, and then reconnect it back to Isaiah, and they use a lot of the context of Isaiah, and that's how come Christians will tell you that Isaiah is predicting things, whereas I say, no, that's not what happened. What happened is the Romans had Isaiah in hand, and they used that to construct the Gospels in a written sense, and then that just makes more sense.
I want to get to something that Prescott said, a bit of humor. A fig tree, not a pig tree.
Huh.
Came is when apparently there were apparently there were these demons in people. Jesus took them out of the people and put them into these pigs, and the pigs drowned themselves, like a whole herd of them. And
all right.
yeah, and I'm thinking, like, you know, what a schmuck.
Yeah, Roman propaganda.
That doesn't sound like that doesn't sound like a.
I should really try to ask a friend of mine. He's a pretty big YouTuber. His name's Yusuf. He used to be a Muslim, and then he converted to Syriac Orthodox Christianity. He had really good insights. His view of Christianity is like nothing I've ever heard of, and it's apparently normative Orthodox beliefs. So try to get him to come for the next one.
Sure.
His YouTube channel's here. I'll post them.
Sure, you can invite him too if you're a friend of his. If you're already connected, feel free. I like thinkers. People get on to me. Why Christians? You know, they're Christians and idolatry and avodah and that. And it's like, yeah, but Christians are God-fearers. You know, for a Noachide, I know Israel. You guys got to be on the money, but there's some leeway, I think, with the Noachides. We have, at least according to the divine code, the Sefer Sheva Mitzvah Hashem, they say, you know, honor a God-fearer. You're obligated to. It might be avodah zorah, but if they acknowledge God at all, there's merit to that. I could be wrong. What do I know?
Take care, Scott.
Well, yeah.
Spot open in the room. If anybody's out there wants to join in, please feel free. We have a spot open to our viewers out there. Go ahead, sir.
See, the whole conversation, you know, and the whole debate falls apart because people won't take the time to listen to the other's point of view and try and understand how they experientially validate their ism. And if you do that, right, and you just push aside the stuff that's belief-based for a moment, then you'll find a common ground. You can, in truth, you cannot help but find a common ground because we all live a life and we all live the experience that the life is. And it's in talking about experiences that validate our, you know, our beliefs or our faith or whatever, that actually unify people. But too much conversations on the polar aspect, and that's the problem.
Well, we're working it out. That's a plus, you know.
Yeah.
The fact that we're getting together and discussing it, I think, you know, a couple hundred years ago, we could probably get burned for this. Being people for talking like this, you know. We're getting better.
I have no problem with it. People being that in particular, it's better than being atheist or pagan or something, you know.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that offends any atheists out there. I apologize.
Well, you're throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You're ignoring your, I suppose the best word is spirituality. You know, you're just discounting that, or at least not acknowledging it within the other traditions. And pretty much they're all founded on some reasonable stuff. I mean, from what I hear about the Noachide position, Judaism, that seems quite valid. It makes sense. You can map that across to other traditions. So find the point of connection first before you start talking about the points of distinction.
I think that the pagans, in a lot of cases, or at least I can't say pagans because Hindus confuse me, but in the Northern European, a lot of the Gaelics, the Celts, it's almost like for those who do follow a paganistic notion that it's they're breaking down God into they see God in the wind or they'll see God in the trees.
Yeah.
And it's not I can see where they're. I mean, when you're a Noachide, you have to remember that we're all from the same stock. We're all from the same family, and we all have the same innate knowledge of God. And like what I guess they call it now, the documentary hypothesis, that over time it's mutated or it's been distilled. It's
Like I like to say,
Yeah.
it's a game of telephone. That's what I say all the time. There's the blue light. What happened to
that's
the
a
orange?
point.
What happened to the orange light, man?
I could. If you'd rather, I can. I got the orange one here.
No, I'm this all right, man.
If you'd rather, I could do it. I thought about it. I thought I'll do blue today, maybe orange next week.
Well, that telephone analogy is validated by Christianity. 41,000 denominations. So that's a story that's being told and changed, and
I don't have a problem. What my position is, I don't have a problem with that. I think that's perfectly fine. I mean, I think it's all right for people to have different heritages and cultures and religions and languages and different perspectives on the same thing. That's what makes us unique snowflakes.
No, well, I disagree because, and here's fundamentally why. There's a common thread that goes through the whole stories, that validates them, and that is that people can, if they, choose to be selfish so-and-sos, cause some havoc. They can do it in family context. Ego can hurt you as an individual, and
well, I'm not really talking about that. I'm talking about, like, let's say the flood story, for example. Like each group of people out there do have their own story, like the Epic of Gilgamesh, for example. I mean, I would say that would just be a game of telephone. One person told their son that story, and their son told their son. Now, I would just say that the Bible would be the original story, but I'm sure other people would disagree with that.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but this is where there's no independent moral compass, if you like. Well, I think there is, actually, but there's no effort to actually say, well, yes, this is a valid teaching. It marries off with other valid teachings. And because we're not able to do that, we can't isolate the teachings that are a cause of a lot of drama. And there are teachings of that nature. I mean, even if we just use that simple example of a suicide bomber, where an imam or some religious leader spoken to a young kid and conned him into believing that God has sex parties in heaven, and that convinced the kid to go out and blow up, 200 people, his fellow. Hey, John, I drifted back after the talk. But if you don't have that sort of, communal responsibility to pick out the bad seeds, then empires can abuse those religions, and I think that's the problem if I picked up on it. And I think it's been used a lot through history. There's plenty of evidence where religions have been used to serve political outcomes. Divide and conquer.
I mean, I definitely agree. I mean, there's evil people out there. Most definitely.
Well, I'm kind of sort of suggesting, though, that those evil people are a concentrated group that actually do it deliberately to get a better economic outcome for themselves, and to hell with the rest of us. So, I'm not looking at just, normal community members that are being selfish. I'm sort of suggesting that there is a group of people high up in the tree that have got a lot of lot of resources and they just keep wanting more.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So
I don't think it's even a
real trouble, mate.
That's got to be effective.
The Bible, I don't remember the exact commandment, but Reuven can help me out here. But there's a commandment in the that says that you if there is an evil person, that you take them out. You're commanded to take out evil people. Someone help me out here. Path of Abraham. Which one of the commandment is that?
I don't think there's at least nothing so cut and dry.
Like what's the guy's name? Almach? I forget. I can't pronounce. Yeah, right. It's in a commandment that says that you have to.
Yeah, but that was a nation, and it's more of a concept.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I think that's.
You're supposed to destroy
good.
evil. That's for sure. But
yeah,
it's like you're supposed to destroy the sin, but not necessarily the sinner. Like,
yeah.
There's a commandment in the Torah that says you can't stand idly over your brother's blood. His sin will be upon your hands. So it's pretty much saying if somebody's out sinning, you have an obligation to go up to them and be like, what you're doing is wrong, stop it, blah, blah, blah. And if you don't, then what? And if you know, it's pretty much saying if you know better and you're not going out to help other people and stop them or like to teach them or whatever, then whatever they do wrong is upon you. So
I love that commandment. That's like one of my favorite commandments, man.
Yeah.
I wish more people actually adhered to that, you know?
Yeah, that's valid. That's validated in the Gnostic texts as well. And it's also validated in our contemporary world because we have shows like, you know, the Super Nanny and whatever. And basically what it's saying is that when you see someone being selfish, even a child, you know, it's advising you to step up and take responsibility. And so in the child situation, as a parent, you should step up and say, no, that's wrong. But really you're servicing that child's well-being for the longer haul. But as a parent, if you ignore that and you allow them to continue to be selfish and self-serving, then it does play out to be a real tragedy. And in the larger community context, what it says to us, and something I think that we fail quite miserably on, is we don't step up as people when we see selfishness playing out in our world well enough. And because of that, we suffer the consequences. You know, it's like Hitler. No one stepped up to stop Hitler or that political force until it was too late and he had too much power. So it's all
right. That's why you got to adhere to that commandment. You know, got to have that in your heart. Exactly.
I agree with you. I think that's an absolutely excellent teaching, and it's spot on. But it also says don't kill the person, don't disrespect them as your equal human being, and that's what I think is really telling that's a very valid teaching, very accurate. So that's a good one. G-O in brackets O-D. Hey, are we going live? Can I promote my book, or is that obscene?
Yeah, why don't you throw the free copy out in the link in the description? I'm sure people love it.
I'm not going to give a free link anymore. I'm running out of cash.
Come on. Hey, you know, I understand. You got to make a buck. I hear you. Got to feed. You got to feed yourself. You got a family to take care of.
Good on you, mate. There we go. That's my book. What is this thing called God? Please buy it. Only costs you $4, guaranteed enlightenment.
Good pitch.
There you go. I finished.
J-Dubs.
Yo, brother John, what's poppin', man? What's happening?
Yeah, what? Somebody sent me something in my feed. You were in a chat. I don't know when it was done.
Oh, is it propaganda?
No, you were in a chat with Brett Keane and G-Man and this guy that calls himself Lord Stephen Christ.
Oh yes, yeah. Stephen Christ. For those who don't know, this man Stephen believes that he is the God of Israel reincarnated as man, one of these
The
guys.
God of Israel reincarnated.
Yeah, as a man.
No, he doesn't. I don't think he says God of Israel. He says he's the Christ.
Well, I'm not gonna use his name, but the Y word. You know what we're talking about? Jehovah.
Yeah.
He thinks he's Jehovah. Let's just put it that way. And
how do we get him into a room?
Well, he'll come in. He'll come if you want him to. He's a nice guy.
Yeah, have a session.
I mean, people take his beliefs a little. I mean, obviously they're a little wackadoo. I mean, he does think he is the creator of the universe, but what can you say?
Bring it on.
Yeah, so what about it? So what about it, Brother John? What about it? Is there a question?
Whose chat was that?
That was I was on his show, his TV blog.
Oh, okay. That was recently? Was it recent?
That was about like 2 months ago, 3 months ago.
Oh, okay.
He is. I have to be honest with you. He's a really nice guy. It's just once you start talking about the Bible and he starts saying that he wrote it and he spoke the words and you kind of go, what are we gonna?
Let me ask you this, because
he was the one speaking to Moses on Mount Sinai. You kind of start scratching your head and going,
Yeah, what's the part of the interview that I watched, he didn't say anything about God of Israel thing. He did say Christ incarnate. But my question, and G-Man was kind of funny. I know G-Man was getting a tickle out of that.
Oh yeah, G-Man loses his mind in that video, yeah.
And G-Man was being condescending. I will grant him that, and he seemed to hold his own. But the thing,
I mean, doesn't the New Testament say that there would be people who mock and ridicule the Christ? So I mean, you can't really.
Bring him in! I want to mock him. But this thing is, but the thing that got me was, I know Brett called him a good man. He's a good man, and you're saying he's a nice guy. This is a guy who's saying he's the Christ incarnate. Now, don't you think there's some screws loose there? I mean, how could this be good?
To answer the path of Abraham in the description, I agree. It's blasphemy.
No, hey, I don't understand this. I'm very confused. Who is this? I can't pronounce the name. Hyles. He's saying that. What did he say? He said,
you gotta forgive Hylas. That's how you pronounce it.
Satan claims to be God, and I said Satan would never do that, and he said he wouldn't. I'm like, no servant of Hashem would ever try to usurp or blaspheme God like Hashem. Now he's talking about the devil for some reason.
Oh yeah, when God says jump, Satan says how high. That's the way it works, Hylas. I don't know.
I don't know why he would think Satan would do something like that. That's a horrible thing to say.
I think of Satan to God kind of like Robin the Batman, if that makes sense. I don't know.
Yeah, what's probably going on though with this dude? It's ego, right? So what's happening with the dude is that, see, ego plays the advantage, right? And so what this guy's, and there's good science to actually validate the sneaky force that the ego is. It can really sneak up on you, right? So ego, as far as I can understand, it seems to be about survival of the self. And so what I reckon's happened to this dude, he's been reading up on religion and that, and he sort of, somehow the ego has seen the advantage of him being God, Popularity comes to him, maybe even cash, might win a girl or two, who knows, but fundamentally, that's the underlying force that's allowed him to step over this line and claim to be God. I'll back it in. I
want to say to Hylas likes to keep saying that there's no one good but God. I mean, come on now. I mean, even the Bible says Noah was a righteous man. Come on.
And Job.
Come on. You're leaving people out.
And Lot.
The thing is, there's no such thing as a rebellious angel. There's no war in heaven. There's no angel with an ego that falls in Judaism. Nowhere.
How does that even make sense?
That's the exact opposite of that. Like J-Dub said, when God
even Muslims don't believe that.
Really?
Don't believe what?
They have like the devil. They have Satan, but he wasn't an angel because they're like angels can't do that. They don't have free will.
Really?
They're like
Think so, bruh?
they believe in the
Think
jinns.
so?
Jinns are they're like halfway between an angel, halfway between a person. This is where we get genie from, and their devil was one of these creatures. And,
Oh, really?
yeah, and he was commanded to bow down to Adam, and he said no. So then he got cast down. Oddly enough, has anybody heard of the religion called Yazidis?
No.
Those-
No. Okay, so their
Doesn't sound
religion,
familiar. No.
their religion in like Iraq and Syria and Jordan, and they're like an ancient religion, and their main the symbol of a religion is a peacock, and it represents an angel who, when God said to them, bow down to Adam, that angel said no, just like in like the Christian and in the Muslim story. But then he was rewarded because God was like, of course you don't bow down to anything except for me. Whereas in Islam and in Christianity, it's the complete opposite, where God's like, bow down to Adam, and then they were like, no, I'm not going to do it. So I don't know, it's interesting. Sorry to go on a tangent.
Well,
But then again, it's all just ridiculous in my mind because I don't understand how that fits into the concept of monotheism. But that's just
It's
like dualism. It's like Zoroastrian belief.
Yeah, the Gnosticism says only honor the inner father, period, nothing else. Don't worship anything born of woman. And maybe that's where the Romans got the idea of a virgin birth, just to try and cloak that. But I got a question for the Noachides, and that is, what's your position with demons and angels? Where do they fit into the theology? Do they have a place, and what is it? Like the devil concept and the angels.
The wolves, basically. And from what I gather, I could be wrong. When we have Jews here, I'm like, hallelujah, because...
So you're saying it's an analogous then? It's not the reality. It's talking about...
Oh no, there are actually angels.
No, there are, yeah. Well, there are angels that are like function, like there's an angel for rain, or there's an angel for, flowers, or what, but when it comes to like the human being, it's not too different. I mean, the demon is... Go ahead, please.
Let me just clarify, because I think a lot of might get lost in semantics. So whenever the Mikra, like the Tanakh, the Bible, refers to an angel, it uses the term melachim, and melachim means messengers. So there's human angels in the Bible. So a lot of times, this is when I pick up some translations, it's very frustrating. Like when it says that it says like angels met people on the way. So when you read in English, you think of these divine beings, but in Hebrew, it could easily just be a flesh and blood person. There's just a prophet. So it really depends on the context what we're talking about when we use the term angel.
So the angels that came to Lot could very well be
human beings, mortal human beings. The quote-unquote angel that wrestled with Jacob, same thing.
Yeah, well, that then becomes valid because that just sort of basically says a person that's operating at their full potential. They're a person operating, in service of the other human being.
And that being said, there's also obviously kind of metaphysical concept of angels, but those are like extension of God's will. It's kind of like how I don't know how to it's hard to use without. I don't know how to describe it in English, but it'd be like saying how we can think of something and have it manifest would be like how Hashem utilizes quote-unquote angels. It's like Hashem's fingers in the God's fingers in the world. It's like how he manipulates creation. That would be like what an angel is. It's not necessarily like there's like a realm of physical beings, like manifestation of God on earth.
Yeah, I understand that. So I'll put it back to you in different words, right?
Yeah.
And I accept that as a valid premise. It's when a person lives to the good wolf, if you want, or whatever, they then become the angel on earth. So, in my understanding from my research, basically the God lives within. It's part of the human condition, and an angel in the way you've described it, is a person that lives out the God condition, and then because of that, they actually offer a service to their fellow human being.
They're
So there's
utilized
no,
by God for a mission. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
it's a very broad
Well,
term.
you
I
could
think.
put it that way, but I'd probably say that they're exercising the God tradition, or
That's
the
not.
innate condition. They're bringing it to reality, right? Bringing it to reality through choice, and because that choice aches for them to love their neighbour, if that makes any sense. So yeah, that fits. That's okay. Now, what about the devil? Is there a devil concept,
No.
or what? No.
There's
Well,
only
that's good.
God.
Fantastic, fantastic. Then this stuff sounds very valid. It really does. And
House
so, are we in the confines of the Torah, basically, in the discussions we've had?
We stretched that a little bit, but everything's rooted in the Torah. Yeah.
Good. So here's how I explain the.
Started out as Torah, but then we kind of ventured off the beginning of the hangout.
Yeah. Right. So here's how I explain the mystical idea of the angels. I think that started with Zoroaster, because if you have a look at the Book of Enoch, it says in the Book of Enoch the six-winged angel, and it was one of the archangels. And I think the term ark, if I'm not mistaken, comes down from the Greek tradition. So the Greeks were in the area, or that would have been part of the lingo. But the six-winged figure, if you actually look at an early depiction of Zoroaster, you find Zoroaster having two wings with three petitions on each. So my conclusion was that the Archangel Michael and Gabriel were actually given reality, if you like, or no, conceptual reality in the Book of Daniel and the Book of Enoch. And that's when angels got a bit flighty. So yeah, interesting.
I've heard there was a misnomer between the Romans and the Hebrew, seeing that they're gods, because they have a god for everything. They got a god for this, they got a god for that, and not the drama that plays out, not the soap opera comic book end of it, but they saw the angels of God as one of these. Was actually their god, their gods,
Yeah, well, actually, if you have a look at, interestingly, 161 BC, we saw a treaty brokered between the Jewish and the Romans. So that's just 1 year before the end of the Maccabean revolt. So you could say, and with Enoch too, there was an attempt to switch calendars. So, and of course now we find Enoch pushed aside, and then you got the Book of Jubilees with its calendar, and you can use that to work out Daniel a bit better. So it's almost like the Romans have really started to stick their finger in the pie, with the Book of Daniel in a big time, and the Book of Enoch, I think. And then that would correlate what you're saying about the Roman psyche starting to appear on the stage of the Bible, possibly. So, I think it's worth exploring.
Back to Parshah, we can just touch on points of Parshah just to keep with the theme of the evening.
Yes.
Really
Please.
saddens me with the king of Edom not letting the Israelites walk through. They even said they would pay for water they would drink, and still refused them. And then Torah also says you can never hold an Edomite in contempt. It's like no matter what, it's a hardcore teaching of humility and love. That even after, because they had to loop back around, and it was just a terrible journey for the nation of Israel, because the king of Edom wouldn't let them pass through his land, and yet God commands that the Israelite never hold an Edomite in contempt. That's tough. That's tough.
Yeah, But that's actually very good, because that's the way we should live. We shouldn't sort of look at nations or anything as enemies. So that's a very good teaching. However, history shows us that that may have played ultimately against the people of Judea, because you see pictures of Assyrians. So historically, the Assyrians took over and became the empire that controlled Judea and that sort of region about 740 BC. So, and you see pictures of Jewish people sort of stuck on spikes. So these Assyrians and Babylonians, they really did treat the Jewish people harshly. So you're left thinking that their religious position may have been a problem for them.
No, this is
No?
what we're talking about is holding a grudge, like bearing a grudge. You're not allowed to do, but somebody's coming to kill you and your family.
Yeah.
You are 100% obligated to defend yourself, especially if they're going to usurp your nation and destroy the temple of God. We are obligated to defend that. But in this context, or particularly if somebody this is a good example. Somebody's like, you go to somebody, you're like, can I borrow your shovel? And they're like, no. And they come to you the next day and they're like, hey, can I borrow some sugar? You're not allowed to say no, out of spite. You can't spite somebody.
If I may.
Sorry.
If I may.
Please.
You're not obligated to defend yourself or his temples. Just smash those temples, the Lord will rebuild them. Doesn't matter. You're obligated to do nothing but love. That's like literally the only commandment. Love your father and love your neighbor as yourself.
Well, the Torah also says, I'll give you these commandments so you should live by them. So if you're going to be put in a position where you're going to be sacrificing yourself for no other reason, then you're not allowed to do that. That's sin. You can't put yourself in a position where you're going to be slaughtered and having your family slaughtered.
Would you allow somebody to come in and kill your children? I mean, you might not have children. I do.
No.
Their deaths are on your hands.
That's my choice. I'm not obligated to do either one. Somebody comes after me, they're going to get shells. Like, believe that. But, no, I'm not obligated to. That's my choice.
Wow.
So you're allowed
You really think that, Hylas?
No, I'll tell you where you're probably wrong. So if you look at Plato, right? He says in the good person 4 characteristics: courage, justice, temperance, and wisdom, right? Now, justice is an interesting phenomenon. Justice says, so the common sense form of justice, and I think if you surveyed a bunch of people and didn't bring the religious ideas in, and you said to them, if you were attacked and your family is under attack, what would you do? They would say that they would defend their family. And if you said, well, why? And you would say, because that would be my right. And that call is just a just position, because the person that's attacking you is being unjust, particularly if you're not an aggressive person either. So I don't, and I see justice as being a phenomenon associated with the God. So it couldn't be a valid proposition that you sit there and do nothing. Justice, the requirement of justice would call you to stand up and defend yourself, because the other person is being unjust. So it wouldn't be a valid teaching of God if it didn't.
Justice favors the strong.
You could stop them from sinning. If you could stop them from taking your family, you're actually doing them a favor. You know?
Yeah, I don't know that it's correct.
If they came to rape your wife, and you, via force, stop him, then I don't know, via force, if you stop him, then he is not guilty of raping your wife. The intention might have been there, but he wouldn't be guilty of doing it. So in a way, by stopping somebody from killing your family, you're actually doing them a favor. You're keeping their karma cleaner, if you want. That might be a way to look at it.
No, you are giving them punishment, you're cleansing them, but the Bible says if you look at a woman with adultery in your mind, you've already committed that sin. Nobody
Well,
can stop you now.
yeah, but that says that if you're tempted, then you've already sinned. I mean, if God sends Satan to you to tempt you, to stray your eye to that
God
good
does not
thing.
send Satan to you. You
Uh,
accept him.
well,
I'm sorry.
okay, well, all right. Well, let's just say that you're tempted. Either way, you're here to be tempted, whether we like it or not. Okay, whether God works for, or whether Satan works with God, or whether you think whatever, you're still here to be tempted, tested, right? We can all say that we're tested on this world, and when God sends you this, or when you're sent this beautiful, leggy, high-heeled, voluptuous, gorgeous, gammy, yummy Hollywood starlet, and it tempts you for that moment, but you turn away and acknowledge this, that you were tempted, and it's only, you've not committed adultery, you've not even coveted because you turned away from it. I never like that. If you're tempted with it, or if the thought crosses your mind, you're guilty of it. I mean, lust, yes, but it says don't covet. But just to be tempted, I have a hard time with that one. It makes no sense.
Yeah, but it's a better premise, but it's a difficult one, right? It's very difficult these are very primitive instincts within us all. I mean, if you see that beautiful woman, I mean, sure, it's going to catch your eye. I think the wisdom part would be that you shouldn't, and the coveting probably means something like, if you find yourself thinking that way, it's probably a wise choice to try and stop it, particularly if you've got your own partner. But I think there's no real... See, when I think of sin now, I think about the only sins that really occur is when you take an action that causes harm to another. That's purely your responsibility. So if you haven't taken that action that's caused that other person harm, then where's the problem?
Yeah, you want to also prevent things that would lead you to harm.
Yeah, but that's back into the realm of you and how well you're meeting the standards of, the goodness or whatever. So if you are operating on a higher level, you'll catch yourself early and you'll say, no, I know the road that goes down and I'm just not going to allow myself to think that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you would be foolish to say that it doesn't exist and that you won't experience it, because that's just ignoring reality. I think.
It's like God prohibits theft, and but in the Ten Commandments at Sinai, He also says not to covet. And when you covet, that is that would be an instigator to theft, even though you might not have caused the harm to your neighbor by taking his wife or his stuff or however you might want to do it. But the fact that you don't want to covet it, the fact that you would be prohibited from coveting it would alone help prevent you from theft in the first place.
Yeah, so what that's talking about is that little beast desire, that's trying to nip desire in the bud. Yeah?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
I want to say something that Jess wrote a second ago. I thought it was an interesting thing from Socrates. It's better to change an opinion than to persist in a wrong one. I try to stay away from beliefs, because every time I start believing in something, it's always proven wrong. If I keep my beliefs to a minimum and keep my mind, a good idea. What was that in the movie Dogma? He says, "What do you believe?" And it's not about belief. He said it's about having a good idea, because it's easy to change an idea. It's easy to adapt an idea to a truth that becomes apparent than it is to believe in something that have to give up a belief when you're confronted with an opposing truth, I guess.
Well, the bottom line is always respect truth at the end of the day. Are you not ashamed of caring? So he had another one there too, Idol. He said, this is from Jess, are you not ashamed of caring so much for the making of money and for fame and prestige, when you neither think nor care about wisdom and truth and the improvement of your soul?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
One often leads away from the other, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Good one, Jess.
Yeah, very nice.
Yeah.
idolatry teaches that. One of the big Noachide laws is the idolatry law, but it's such an intense, because we think of it as, I mean, a lot of Christians will come out and say that all it means is not making an image and bowing to it. But when I read the law, when I read my Kitzer Shulchan Aruch for Noachides, it's such an extensive, and really it's a warning against full-blown materialism. You know what I mean? It's not even just the idea of an image that you worship in your mind, but an idea that leads you astray. And 9 out of 10 times it's going to have to do with something like money, or it's going to have something to do with property. And the worship of of existence itself, even. You know, it's like the very first thing is to, if you let go of the material. In one form, I don't know. I could be wrong on this. I'm not poskening. I don't know. You know. I just got a picture taken of me, okay, or something.
No, that's Benny.
Oh, hi, Benny. I don't even know what I was saying now.
Oh, Norse died red too. Oh, he's gonna use it.
But fundamentally, what you were talking about, I think, was idolatry. But if you think that through, it's about worshipping other things, or and really, it's probably got a close connection to desire, really. You know, it's sort of basically saying, don't bloody preoccupy your mind with all of this fanciful stuff. You know, love the, well, for me it'd be the inner living Father sort of thing. There he goes again. Oh, Brother John took the photo then.
What's up? What's going on? I come back and people taking pictures. Oof.
Boy.
Yeah, about letting go of the material, and we need material. We need food. Our children are material, you know, but yet there's a line to be drawn.
Well, it's pretty much about desire, really. Just, you know, I think.
I know what I wanted to bring up. We were talking about angels.
Yes.
Earlier, and that was in this week's Parshah, and it flat out says, here it is. This is it's Numbers 20, starting at about, I guess, 11 or 12. Let me just what it said here. And the Lord said to Moses and Aaron, because ye believe not in me, and I sanctify me in the eyes of the children of Israel, therefore ye shall not bring. Oh, okay. I'm skipping ahead here. It was 16, where we specifically spoke. Okay, I'll start at 15 here. How our fathers went down into Egypt, and we cried out to the Lord, and he heard our voice, and he sent an angel and brought us out of Egypt. Behold, we are in Kadesh, a city in the uttermost of thy border. Let us pass. So he sends an angel, and when I read in the commentary here, it says it literally sends a messenger. The reference is to Moses, the God-sent liberator and guide. So, in this case, an angel was Moses.
Well, there you go. So that
earlier, and I saw it. I saw it in the Parshah, so I got to bring it up.
So that then that's talking about a man that's serving
a living, breathing human being.
Yes, but but more than that, it's a human being that's servicing his community, you know, and their well-being. And I think that's a valid concept to apply to an angel, the idea of an angel. When you talk about floaties in the sky, I don't think that that's valid. You know, flying beasts in the people in the sky and all that sort of nonsense.
More Socrates. From Jess, I got to read it if I can maintain, because I'm flickering here. A system of morality based on relative emotional values is a mere illusion. A thoroughly vulgar conception which has nothing sound in it, and nothing true. See, my screen's flickering. I apologize.
A system of morality which is based on relative emotional values is a mere illusion. A thoroughly vulgar conception which has nothing sound in it and nothing true. Socrates. The next one that Jess offers is, I desire only to know the truth and to live as well as I can, and to the utmost of my power I exhort all other men to do the same. I exhort you also to take part in the great combat, which is the combat of life, and greater than every other earthly conflict. Oh, okay, I see what he's saying. So he's urging people to take part of the battle within, I think, not necessarily military fight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Is that it, Jess?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that makes sense. Penny, are you paying attention? You learning something? Yes. Have you turned into a good person yet? Hey, sorry?
He's learning Google Plus.
No, we're trying to turn Benny from a gangster into a volunteer. I can't turn the cam off. Oh, okay. Hey, Benny, have we got you going down to the old folks' home and volunteering yet? No. Come on, Benny. Step up. It's in the experience, mate. That's how you know stuff. Not by taking pictures.
There's no Sky Daddy. Just get over it.
Says the pigeon.
I agree with you, mate. It's inside you.
I've got this book that I read, and it confirms it.
No, wrote. W-R-O-T-E. Oh, dear. Speaking of which, I must go and read that thing that you gave me, John. So, happy days, gentlemen. That was a lovely discussion. Enjoyed it thoroughly.
How do Australians say good night? I know good day. Good day is a common phrase. Is there a good night?
Nah, we just say, oh, fuck off.
Back off.
I don't. Don't put me with that, John. What do we say, mate? What do we really say at night time?
No, when I'm at the pub and someone goes, I just say, well, fuck off.
Oh boy, here comes the school.
What do you do? What do you do when you're at church?
Good night.
What do you say when you're at your church? Sorry, Jess.
The rock pigeon fox.
I know a Monty Python drinking song.
Does it include the killer rabbit?
Manuel Kant was a real pissant who was very rarely stable. Heidegger was a boozy beggar who could drink you under the table. David Hume could not consume Lion Hegel. And Wittgenstein was a very swine who was just as sloshed as Schlegel. Socrates himself is particularly missed. Everybody said he was permanently pissed. Free will, about a half a pint of Shandy was particularly ill. Plate of the steak, stick it away. Half a crate of whiskey every day. Aristotle was a bugger for a bottle. Hobbes was fond of his dram. And Rene Descartes was a drunken fart. I drink, therefore I am. Now Nietzsche couldn't teach about the raising of the wrist. A lovely little thinker, but a bugger when he's pissed. Thank you very much.
Oh boy. Oh,
Hey, if you guys... Hey, what's that, Jess?
There's more pictures.
It's Benny. He's got a picture fetish. Hey, have you guys ever had a session? I must get going, but have you guys ever had a session where you've all got drunk?
Never been.
Planning it.
Never.
Not yet.
Well, there you go. There's something to aim for. Have a drunken night.
They have a night that says knee, too.
We had some where a few of us were feeling good.
I know.
Anyway, happy days. See you later. See you later, John.
Adios,
See you
amigo.
later, alligator. in a while, Crocodile.
See you later. Yeah. Oh, where's my line?
Back off.
Okay, Pigeon. I have an old Pigeon from like '06. Yeah, that Pigeon's in bad shape now. It was old.
Is Reuven, Brother John, still with us? Or did they get raptured? Are they the elect?
Yeah.
What happened?
Yeah.
We have John. We do have Reuven. At least there's Reuven, texting away. I made him a controller of the group, a moderator. He doesn't talk, but he's our honorary moderator. Gonna get him a microphone one of these days.
What happened to that app that he was using?
Say it again.
We installed a voice modulator for Reuven on his supercomputer. He should be able to speak now.
You stole one.
Yeah, well, we had to install it because Reuven's Skynet. He's a supercomputer.
Where did you install it?
He's a good one.
We are the facts.
He's a good Skynet.
Where did you install it?
He's like the machine from Persons of Interest, right, Brother John?
Yes. Where'd you install the app?
I don't know. You're gonna have to ask him. I only ordered it.
Oh.
We do have a spot open for any viewers out there wishing to.
Reuven, he just changed it.
We would love to have you. And I'm being loud.
His symbol is now Skynet.
Okay, sorry.
It has a pyramid and a Y in the middle. YMCA.
I have returned.
Getting yelled at. James is getting yelled at.
Fine, we got a pigeon and an owl.
I have returned. Hello.
And we got the infinite symbol too.
Welcome back.
Thanks for having me.
Did you get in trouble, James?
From the parts unknown.
James.
I am the voice of Skynet.
Ooh.
I had the wife come in and say I was yelling too loud, so.
Yeah.
I missed yelling.
Huh?
I missed yelling.
I guess I was yelling.
Yeah.
Oh, yeller.
You got reprimanded.
Oh boy.
I got the look.
You got the look. No nook.
I guess I can tell the world we're about to have. We're going to be having
Number
a
3?
second child. So.
Yeah, you mentioned that I think last week or so.
I still haven't been able.
What's happening? Sorry.
Going to have another baby.
Amazing.
Yes.
Only good things for you.
Thank you.
Man, good things and other things too. Oh, yeah, you had to go through.
When's the party?
Taking care of the baby and all that fun stuff.
When's the party?
Party's about to begin. I think we've been live, but we've got viewers, and I don't want to cut them out yet. So I guess let's begin the party now.
No, when's the party for your baby?
Oh, that party. I don't know. I'll have to ask for the wife.
Oh boy.
I don't know.
Oh boy.
You're gonna fly us all in, right, James?
Hands change hands every day.
Yeah, I would love to fly you in. Yes. Just wait for it. I'll get back to you.
Okay.
We'll have it here.
All right.
We'll be right back here. We'll get her on camera.
Oh.
Just kidding. I'm kidding.
I'll have my private jet take me.
Ooh.
No, you just get a bird. You're an owl. Why don't you fly? Oh boy, here comes the hand.
Because God said you can't fly.
Yeah, you can fly too, pigeon.
Emus can't fly.
I'm afraid I can do that.
High five the sky.
High five sky. Everybody put your hands up to the screen. Feel the vibes. Feel the hand. Anybody here ever get Robert Tilton back in the 80s and 90s? Anybody remember that guy?
Oh, yeah.
He was an overnight preacher, and he would talk and go into Hamalakamazoya. Put your hand up to the screen. Just get up and put your hand to the screen and let the spirit flow through and all that good stuff.
Yeah, get your healing touch right now. Put your hand on the screen. And with your other hand, write a check out and so is
Yeah, we all like to talk to the hand.
Talk to the hand. Speak to the hand.
So you're a seed.
Yeah, says the pigeon with no hands. You got feet though.
I can fly.
I know you got wings. You got milk too.
They're not working.
You just need someone to buddy up, fly together.
I just need a runway.
Oh, ducks fly together. Yeah, you need a duck friend.
God's my friend.
Earth is my friend.
What do we have here? We've got Israelite conquering some folks. What's left in the Parsha here before it gets too late? Of course, there's a song of victory. They conquered the Amorite kingdoms. And then we move into the Haftorah, which is Judges.
Oh, I missed Aaron dying and the snakes.
Yes.
You came in shortly just after that, too.
Oh, man.
Something I brought up, and please, if there's anything you need to add or if I'm off, thank God for the Jews.
So, I read something about the serpents I can share.
I would, please.
It's from an 800-year-old book, so give me a second as I find the rest.
And meanwhile, we got a bald eagle.
Oh, wow. It actually just opened up to the page right now. Okay, so this is a book written by the son of the Rambam, the son of Maimonides.
Oh.
And it's not about the Parsha, but in the section of the book, he's utilizing it to give across a teaching about miracles. So he says, the Torah testifies that when snakes bit the people of Israel in the desert, the people were saved from death by repenting from their sin that allowed the snakes to harm them and placing their trust in God. The Torah says, describing their repentance, quote, "And the people came to Moshe and said, 'We have sinned against God and you.'" And that's from chapter 21, verse 7. They relied and depended on God, as it says, quote, "Pray to God and remove the snakes from us," end quote. But God did not remove the snakes. Instead, he kept the snakes and their biting as before, but he worked in a manner of his miracles and wonders, to which he accustomed the people that the bites were no longer fatal. In this way, they saw that the reasons they had been afflicted was that God had removed his providence, i.e. his protection from them. Therefore, God said to Moshe, quote, "Make a serpent," and Moshe made a copper snake. The copper snake did not have some inherent magical powers, as the heretics and fools among the people believe. King Hizkiyahu, what's that in English? King Hizkiyahu. He was like one of the few righteous kings. Anyways, King Hizkiyahu had to dismantle and destroy it because of that error. As it says, quote, "He removed the high places, broke the altars, cut down the trees of idolatries, and crushed the copper snake made by Moshe. For until that time, the people would offer incense to it. He called it their copper," end quote. And that's from 2 Kings. Of that, the Mishnah says, "He crushed the copper snake, and the sages approved." The copper snake had no magical power that saved the people, as the people imagined about talismans. Rather, the Mishnah tells us that it was supposed to signify, quote, can a snake give life or death? Rather, they would look up towards it and look up towards the snake on the pole, and dedicating their hearts to the Father in heaven, they would be healed. If not, they would deteriorate. They would deteriorate. And then it says, the sages in the Talmud tell and relate a story. In a certain place, there was a poisonous reptile that harmed the people. The inhabitants informed Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa. He said, quote, "Show me its lair." They showed it to him, and he placed his heel over the hole, and the creature emerged, bit him, and died. He carried it on his shoulders and brought it to the entrance of the study hall. He said to them, "See, my children, it is not a reptile that kills, sin kills." At that time they said, "Woe to the person who meets the reptile, but woe to the reptile that meets Rabbi Ben Dosa." The Talmud contains other such stories which are rejected by the people. The Talmud contains other such stories which are rejected by the people who do not appreciate their value. But one who is properly religious in sound principles, proper perceptions, and complete knowledge will understand and accept them. So basically, it's saying the concept that the miracle that happened in the desert with the people being healed, it wasn't a miracle of superstitious belief, but it was a miracle of being faithful to God, because it's not the way things happen in the world aren't by chance. It's very mechanical, systematic. It's logical. So if people were being bitten by a snake, they looked up to the copper snake out of shame, and that shame brought them to repentance towards God. But some people believe that somehow there's some mystical powers within this copper pole, which is why the King Hizkiyahu had to destroy it in the first place, to remove superstition from the people.
Hezekiah would be
Hezekiah. That's the king.
Hezekiah? How is it pronounced again? The proper pronunciation?
Hizkiyahu.
Hizkiyahu.
Yes.
Hizkiyahu. Ah. Yeah, I brought up earlier that in the Christian reference, Jesus said that the Son of Man should be raised up like the staff of Moses, and it's almost like, was that a foretelling that he knew that one day that idol of his would have to be destroyed?
Right. It's like people can make an idol out of anything. That's the point,
Mm-hmm.
Even something that's supposed to bring them closer to God, they can just completely miss the mark and just focus on the wrong thing. It's like there's the parable of how idolatry started. Everybody used to believe in God, or everybody who was God conscious, because the first humans didn't believe in God. But when people started to become God conscious, they were all monotheists. But eventually they started to relate to God like they would to a king. Like, you have to give dukes and serfs, anybody above you have to give them reverence too. So a lot of people start to give reverence to the moon and the stars and the wind and stuff like that. And in that's how they delved into idolatry. They kind of forgot about God in the process. So in the service of God, you could also forget about it. You can kind of miss the mark. So even though you might have a completely kosher belief, it might lead you astray. You got to keep yourself in check. Nobody's perfect.
Yes.
So I got to put that fence up.
Mm-hmm.
And the death of Aaron, honestly, it didn't really hit me emotionally when I've read this Parshah. I've been seriously studying for about 5 years. Seriously studying, I guess you could say, for about 5 years now, and still not serious enough. But yeah, when I read about the death of Aaron this time, because it's written so dry, or compared to some of the fictions we might read or escapist reading, whatnot.
Right, it just kind of happens. It's like an afterthought almost. Yeah.
But today it hit me. It hit me pretty hard. It's like the end of an era, kind of, or something. It really hit me hard this time.
Oh, really?
Yes. I mean, these guys have been through a lot, Moses, a couple of years ago, I couldn't think about the death of Moses without shedding tears. I tried to describe it to people, and I would almost weep.
Oh, and this is a Parsha 4 too. This kind of like marks the beginning of the end almost for Moshe. Because now he knows his fate. He knows that when they get to land, that's it for him. from this Parshah, yeah.
And Miriam as well. She had been, this is Aaron, Miriam.
They're part of that generation that had to die off.
See, that really gets me. That gets me by the boo-boo. I don't know if anybody knows the story but when it was time for Moses to die, he went up and he prayed so hard. They say the gates of heaven shook. And if he had kept going just one more minute, he would have broken them down, and that's why he had to die. And that just really hits real hard, He didn't want to go because he just couldn't. He just had to be in paradise. He really wanted to see it through.
He wanted to complete his mission.
See, here I go again. So yeah, the death of Aaron hit me this year.
Yeah.
And he was a prophet. He was the prophet to,
He helped Moshe become Moshe. Like, if it wasn't for Aaron, Moses couldn't accomplish it. He was his lips. He was his, like it says in the Torah, like before they go meet Pharaoh, Pharaoh, God says to Moshe, he says, "You will be God and Aaron will be your prophet," to Pharaoh. It was like, and besides he was his brother, but it's like their whole relationship was intertwined with his service of God. So it was like, even though they were brothers, it was so much more deeper than that. It was like the bond was amazing. But then you just see Moshe's reaction to Aaron's death. It's just like, he's dead, but now his son takes his place. Like, the mission has to go on. That's how I see Moshe, like, so selfless. And that's like what his death is like too. Like, he's crying to God not because he wants to go into the land of milk and honey. He's crying to God because he wants to make sure his people do their job. He does his job as a leader. That's how Moshe is. It's completely selfless. Amazing. Not even the death of his brother, his best friend, his ally in life was going to shake him from his life's purpose. That's dedication. That's service of God. Didn't blink an eye.
Yeah, it stripped him down of his clothing and gave it to his son. It was just such a, and I always read it very dryly, but when I pictured it, and it really hit me. It's not like I want to say it's a burden for the son, but what? Yeah, it's like the end of the old. It was the transition. It had to happen, but yeah. Torah can be very dry, but if you allow it, if you put yourself there, and you do have to read it a couple of times. You do have to make a process of reading Torah, but I'm finding the more I read it, the more I find more humor.
Yeah.
And more really hardcore emotional, themes that are, we still see these themes in our fictions today, in our films and things like that. We still see these, but this is the real deal, and it's very emotional. It can be very humorous at times.
But it's all dependent on the reader, That's why you have a yearly reading cycle, because every year you're a different person, so the Torah is going to be new to you. But that's true with all things in life. But how much more so if you find the Torah to be an extremely important aspect of your life? If you're going to change, obviously your view of it's going to change, and you're going to get new things out of it.
One thing I admire about Judaism is the way that the stories really do, in an odd way, but it's almost like it makes your mind click with the seasons. I don't know if I'm saying it right, and I'm not a solstice guy or anything like that, but it just seems to fit. It's like it's everything you need for that week, that month. or that time of year. It just fits. And I never really understood the Parshas. I had a Tanakh, and it marked the Parshas, but they were all in Hebrew. I didn't read Hebrew. I didn't know about it. I never could understand, Bible study in a Hebrew sense. And yeah, it works. It works. Baruch Hashem. What do you have anything on Aaron by any chance? Anything you wanted to talk about or anything?
No. I don't know. Aaron's a kind of perplexing figure to me. He's hard to understand. He has such a strange role in life. But he's kind of like, what's really interesting that everybody forgets about Aaron, that he was a prophet before Moses was. So what does that even mean? Like, but you know so little about him, but you know so much about Moses. But Aaron was a prophet for longer than Moses.
You gotta get yourself a pair of headphones there, James, so you can keep waking up the wife.
Oh no, that was my boy. He's just coming in, being a sweetheart, asking me if I wanted something to drink. Yeah, and I heard you say something while I was talking to him. Aaron was a prophet before Moses. I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, because Moses has the burning bush experience, right? And then not too long after, Aaron comes to him in the desert and being like, "Hey, God, talk to me." So you have to bear in mind that Aaron got the revelation in Egypt. He walks into the Sudan, finds Moshe to tell him that God talked to him. So he has this whole probably, I don't know, at least a week of being a prophet before Moses was. So. And he was like, "Yeah, let's do this. Come on, Moshe, we're going to do this. I'm going to be your mouthpiece, and we're going to topple this empire and free our people." And Moses was there, like, "I don't have good speech. I don't know. I'm afraid." But Aaron was like, "Let's do this. This is our job." He made Moshe. Like, it's crazy.
That just reminds me. I'm taken right back to Abraham. After all he went through, when he asked for a son, and God said, go to your handmaiden, or your wife's handmaiden is yours, and Sarah had already prepared her. She was already ready before Abraham even said anything.
Yeah, for sure. And you gotta like bear in mind that I think a lot of people miss this point for whatever reason. I don't understand, but Hagar was like probably Sarah's top pupil, top disciple. Like she groomed Hagar. You know, so much so that Hagar was granted the ability to receive prophecies. So that's interesting.
What did he get you?
He's getting me some lemonade.
Oh, very nice.
Okay, nice, yeah. Refreshing.
Good kid. He's a good kid. Unfortunately, he lives in Texas. Not that he's so far away, but he just lives in Texas. Texas is all right. First synagogue I ever went to was in Texas. First rabbi I ever met that I knew was a rabbi was in Texas.
Did he wear a cowboy hat instead of a fedora?
No.
That would be kind of cool, actually.
But one of his good buddies that would come in was a Harley guy, and he had a do-rag on. He had the bandana, and that's what he wore.
All right, yeah.
Torah. What is Torah?
Terah, or it's Terah. I guess you can't really write it, but it's a hard H. It's Abraham's father.
Oh.
Terah.
Terach.
I don't know what to be in English. I should look that up. Let me get my
Torah.
1 second.
Let's do it in Hebrew. Thank you, Jacob. My Israel.
I have a question that I'd like to ask this group because it's not an opportunity to get to ask this to other people. What does
Other boys, huh?
What's everybody's preferred translation of specifically the Torah, if not the entire Bible?
I'll start us off. I own, because I was really broke at the time, but I needed a Chumash, so I got an old Hertz edition. Online, I like Mechan Mamre.
Really? That's my rabbi's website.
Yeah, no kidding. Well,
Yeah.
bless your rabbi, because
It's not his translation. It's a free.
Right.
It's like a 19th. Yeah, like a copyright free one. But yeah, that's his website. Yeah.
That's well, I'm on it quite a bit. Well, bless his heart. Tell him thanks from a goy. Tell him there's a goy who says thanks. It's bookmarked up top on his. Do
you know who's his top student is?
I do not.
It's the author of Guide to the Noachide. I don't know if you've read it.
I have not.
I'll send you a copy if you can message me. I'll send you a copy.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, they're very like even the moniker in the website. If you look on the tab bar, it says like the Bible for Jews and non-Jews. So it's very nice.
All right. I've the book that I have Service of the Heart, which is a prayer book. That's geared for the Gentile, and the Rabbi Moshe Weiner's Divine Code. I have not, but that would be good. Yeah, I'm going to send you a message right now. As a matter of fact, while I'm thinking about it.
I use the my preferred translation is the Koran Chumash or the Koran Tanakh. Here, I'll show you everybody so like everybody can see. 1 second. Looks like this. Can you see?
Yes.
I don't know if there's light.
Yeah, that's a nice hefty book there. You can do some real good Bible thumping with that.
This is just the Torah, and here I'll show you what the full Bible looks like. Sorry for if I look disheveled. This is the Chumash. The Chumash is the Torah. And then this is the full Bible, the full Tanakh. So just a size comparison.
Oh wow! Ooh, what a Tanakh. That's a Tanakh I'd get my hands on.
Yeah. So what is that? That says filled with commentary and.
No commentary.
Stuff? No commentary.
These ones don't have any commentary in it.
Oh wow! Okay.
And the benchmark, a litmus test, if anybody wants to know. For a good translation, it's not like obviously foolproof, but like a good way to look if you want to know if you have a really good translation or not is if you look in the first chapter of Genesis, the first chapter and the 21st verse. It says this is when it's talking about creation and it's talking about the birds and the sea life. And in the 21st verse, in the Hebrew, it says, "Vayivera Elohim eth hata'anim gadolim." And in Jewish translations, they translate as various different stuff. And Christians, they pretty much always translate it as whales for some reason. But the translation, it literally translates to. 1 second, let me just find it again. It literally translates to, "And God created the giant reptiles or the giant crocodiles." So ta'anim's like a reptile or a crocodile. Like when Moshe throws his staff with Pharaoh, remember that? And it changes into a ta'anim. So, and so it says on that day they created the great reptiles, the great crocodiles. So if you want to know if you have a good translation, you got to see how they translate chapter 1, verse 21 of that.
It says sea monsters in the Hertz edition.
That's I guess that could also be related to, yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
But it literally means the great reptiles or the great crocodiles.
And some people see that as whales, huh?
The Christian translations, they did it, but if a lot of people now see it as dinosaurs. So.
Ooh. You said
that. That's also just, that might be looking into it a little bit too much, but I don't know.
Yeah, I kind of like Brufen got me hooked on the Bible I use now, the Art Scroll edition of.
Yeah, that's all. That's really good to learn with. Yeah, for sure.
You know, all my life I've been using, you know, Christian Bibles, and it's like so much better, and it's like, oh man, and I just love having the commentary on the bottom. Really, you know, really helps you out.
That's the
so much better. It's so much. It's the way it's translated is so much better too. Like Genesis chapter 1, verse 1 is like, in the beginning of God's creating. That's how it's translated in the Jewish Bible, but in Christian Bibles it will say like in the beginning of God's creation, like it's like a
right, yeah.
And that's such a better way of putting it, like creating, you know, like not creation, but yeah, I think, you know, it's like, I don't know.
No translation's perfect.
Yeah.
But.
I have a JPS Tanakh, and the opening verse, Genesis 1:1, was when God began to create.
Ah, okay. Now the commentary in the Art Scroll says that it's because they don't want to put like a they don't want to seem like it's in categorized order or something to that effect. Does that? I always found that interesting. Like it's not in a particular order.
Yeah.
It's just explaining God's creating things. Here it is.
Yeah, that's the one day. And day 2, and yet it's often translated, or at least in thought process, as the first day, the second day, or you know, or it was like day 6, isn't it? That's actually specifically solidified, where it's not real specific anywhere else. Something I could be wrong on that. It's getting late. Well, it is 11 o'clock. I'm going to go ahead and stop our worldwide live broadcast. For all the fine folks out there in YouTube land and Google Plus land and everywhere else land, thank you very much for tuning in tonight. We hope to do this. I hope to get this out on every Thursday. So thank you, and shalom, y'all.